After our parents died, my younger sister insisted on dividing the family property with me, but accidentally discovered a box our parents had buried underground. It contained a pair of beast taming rings. One was carved with a small black snake, the other with a little earth dog. My sister snatched the earth dog ring first, leaving the black snake ring for me. She claimed the earth dog symbolized loyalty and would surely bring her wealth, so she frantically fed it to make it spit out gold coins, enabling her to live like a wealthy heiress. However, my younger sister spends money recklessly, frantically feeding the little stray dog to make it produce more coins. Overburdened, the poor dog eventually exploded and died. The little black snake, on the other hand, feeds on others' wealth and transfers it to me, but I always felt uneasy about this, so I rarely relied on it. Through my own efforts, I gradually became a billionaire CEO, looking at the venomous-eyed little black snake. I shuddered and sealed it back into the beast control ring. At that moment, my sister barged in with spiteful eyes and stabbed a knife directly into my abdomen. If it weren't for you taking my little black snake away, I should be the billionaire CEO now. Opening my eyes, the icy sensation on my thigh sent a shiver down my spine. Watching my sister disdainfully fiddle with the small earth dog beast ring in her hand, I understood immediately. I had been reborn. I looked down, clearly remembering that in my previous life, it was only after my sister and I performed the blood oath that the statue on the beast ring transformed into a real little animal. But now, before I could even perform the blood oath, the small black snake on the beast ring in my hand had already detached from the ring, flicking its tongue as it coiled around my thigh. Seeing the venomous gaze of the small black snake, I instantly felt a chill run down my spine. Unlike in the previous life, my sister didn't cherish the small earth dog beast ring in her hand this time. Instead, she said with slight disdain, "Sis, we haven't even performed the blood oath yet, so how did your little black snake detach from the ring? I want to trade with you." Hearing my sister's words, the little black snake's triangular eyes immediately lit up, even more human-like. It detached from my thigh and began slowly crawling toward my sister. But in the previous life, it was only after my sister and I dripped our blood that the two little beasts detached from the beast rings. Watching the little black snake's human-like smile spread across its mouth, I instantly realized, not only had I been reborn, but the little black snake had been reborn as well. Seeing the little black snake crawling toward her, my younger sister immediately threw the small earth dog's beast ring to the ground, snatched the beast ring from my hand, and wrapped the black snake around her own neck. She smugly said to me, "You're the older sister, so giving in to me shouldn't be a problem, right? This little black snake has such smooth and shiny skin, it suits me perfectly. As for you, a country bumpkin like you is better off paired with that little earth dog." Before I could even speak, my sister couldn't wait to drip her blood onto the beast taming ring. Immediately after, her expression froze for a moment before she clapped her hands in excitement and exclaimed, "My little black snake can plunder other people's wealth and transfer it to me. If I specifically target millionaires, I'll never have to worry about food or clothing again. I can live the life of a wealthy heiress." The younger sister tightly hugged the little black snake in her arms, looking at me with a guarded expression. I leisurely picked up the small earth dog beast ring from the ground and said to my sister with a smile, "Then I, your elder sister, will wish you in advance a life of luxury as a young lady from a wealthy family." With that, I paid no more attention to my sister and instead performed the blood ritual to claim ownership of the small earth dog beast ring. The moment the blood dripped onto it, it indeed confirmed my suspicions from my previous life. The functions of the two beast rings are completely different. The stray dog beast ring converts food into gold coins. The more it eats, the more coins it produces, but if it eats too much food, the stray dog won't be able to convert it all into coins and will instead explode and die. Looking at the adorable stray dog freed from the statue, I patted its head and said, "In this life, you'll live well with me, woof woof." After separating from my younger sister, I looked at my own emaciated arms, speaking to the adorable little mutt in my hands. "Sorry, little dog, I'm just too hungry. Could you please give me a gold coin?" The little mutt barked a few times, and I brought the hardened, moldy flatbread from my bag to its mouth. The little mutt didn't show the slightest disdain, opening its big mouth and swallowing it whole, and it spat out a gold coin for me. I took this gold coin straight to the pawn shop and exchanged it for tens of thousands in cash. Looking at the heavy cash in my hand, I suddenly recalled my previous life. I didn't like how the little black snake plundered others' wealth to feed me, as I found it rather unethical. Moreover, the little black snake's wealth plundering wasn't without cost. It didn't eat food but survived by draining its master's vitality. I also understood why the little black snake voluntarily left the beast ring after rebirth. Only then could my sister witness its true power. That's the only reason it didn't follow me in my past life. I didn't let the little black snake plunder my fortune, so naturally it couldn't drain my vitality either. In my previous life, I became a billionaire CEO entirely through my own abilities without relying on the beast control ring. I spent days and nights tirelessly studying company management and researching various projects, so busy that there's no time even for a single meal, even when my wealth rivaled nations. I developed severe stomach problems. Even slightly cold or mildly spicy food would immediately land me in the hospital after eating. But now, with the money I earned from the little mutt, I happily bought a whole pile of ice cream and the spicy strips I craved so much in my past life. After eating and drinking to my heart's content, I didn't rush to start building my fortune based on my past life's memories. Instead, I bought a plane ticket and started traveling the world to enjoy life, to make up for the regrets of my previous life. Unlike my foolish sister, I didn't exploit the little mongrel dog excessively, forcing it to exchange food for gold coins before it could grow properly. In the end, the little mongrel dog exploded and died. She kept indulging in extravagant spending daily, and even after losing the dog, she didn't restrain her consumption, ultimately ending up in destitution. But my experience from running a company in my previous life remains. In this life, even without the help of a beast control ring, I can still return to being a billionaire CEO, although I don't force the little mutt to eat food in exchange for gold coins. But the greedy little mutt still spat out quite a few gold coins for me. With these gold coins, I've now accumulated millions in wealth, and now, my younger sister has also been relying on the little black snake to plunder others' fortunes. Successfully became an executive at an investment firm. Any stock she sets her eyes on is destined to soar and skyrocket wildly. From then on, my sister became the stock god of the investment world. But as I looked at my sister's face on the news, despite the thick foundation concealing it, I could still see the exhaustion in her expression, too. I knew it all along. My sister hadn't actually studied stocks carefully, but was entirely relying on the little black snake to plunder others' financial luck and transfer it to herself. My sister didn't keep it to herself either. She directly opened a live stream, letting stock traders follow her purchases, claiming she wanted to help everyone get rich together. Many online experts immediately began harshly criticizing my sister. They said she was just temporarily lucky, and that hosting a live stream to lead investors would eventually leave them completely bankrupt. Let's see how little sister deals with the consequences then. Yet little sister didn't care at all. Instead, she went even further by extensively hosting live streams to invest in stocks. I'll lose everything. Do you know how much money I'm making now? Do you know how much the investors watching my streams have earned? When I'm rich enough to rival nations, let's see if you still dare to challenge me online. The experts were all red-faced with anger, cursing that little sister would eventually fall from grace. As for me, I relied on the experience of running a company in my previous life. Using the money earned from the little stray dog, I gradually started entering the stock market. However, this was also my goal, but no longer to become a billionaire CEO, because living like that would be too exhausting. Moreover, in my previous life, when I truly became a billionaire CEO, my long-deceased parents suddenly showed up at my doorstep. The billionaire CEO's parents, dead for years, suddenly reappeared in the world, wealthy and with family reunited. Netizens were overwhelmingly envious. Yet no one knew that my parents' first act upon meeting me was to try seizing all my assets, even using a black serpent to drain my fortune's luck. During those days, if it weren't for my terrifying strength and desperate resistance, I would have long been devoured beyond recognition by my own biological parents. When I invested in the stock market, my sister naturally took notice of me. She traveled around the world every day, completely indifferent to the stock market trends. A casual point of the finger reveals a potential stock ready to soar. Look at me, even $1 million needs to be spread across several stock investments. My sister immediately called me, mocking. What, you want to make money in the stock market like me? Look at your petty demeanor, your little mutt isn't cutting it. Why don't you just ditch that mutt, watch my live stream and follow my investments? I paid no attention, merely responding with a flattering smile. With my current investments, my assets have now reached tens of millions. Moreover, my investment skills and foresight have improved significantly compared to my previous life. Now I have more than enough money to spend, and the food for my little mutt is no longer what it used to be. All kinds of delicacies like abalone and seafood are now on the menu, and I won't allow the little mutt to spit out gold coins for me anymore. I patted the cute little mutt's head and said, I have enough money now. You don't need to spit out gold coins for me anymore. Eat whatever you want. I'm not short on your food or the gold coins you produce. Speaking of which, I suddenly remembered that my sister wasn't wrong about one thing. The little mutt is loyal. Even if I forcibly prevent it from spitting out gold coins for me, it still secretly fills my safe with them. As days passed, my sister's popularity grew higher and higher, and she was elevated to godlike status by stock traders. By now, She had established her own company and overnight became a billionaire CEO. While I was still at home studying the trends of the stock market, my younger sister suddenly came home, her body adorned with dazzling jewelry that nearly blinded me. My sister patted my head and said triumphantly, "Sis, guess who called me today?" I ignored her, just hugging my little mutt while staring intently at the stock market trends on my computer, seeing that I wasn't paying attention. She didn't get angry but continued on her own. It was our parents. Hearing this, I immediately felt a chill run down my spine and almost dropped the little puppy in my hands. I forced myself to stay calm and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Our parents passed away long ago." My sister looked at me with disdain. If this miraculous beast-taming ring can exist in this world, why is it impossible for our parents to come back to life? Pretending to think for a moment, I then exclaimed with feigned surprise, "You're right, maybe they really have come back to life. Where are they? Quickly take me to see them." My younger sister disdainfully pushed my hand away and even wiped the spot I touched with a tissue. "Why would you go see Mom and Dad? They said they only acknowledge me as their daughter. After all, my achievements are greater than yours. Besides, they didn't just come back to life. They said our family is a hidden ancient lineage, and only exceptional children like me are worthy of their acceptance. Someone like you, sister, isn't even fit to reclaim your ancestry." I immediately feigned disappointment, covering my eyes and sobbing. My sister sneered from the side, "Sister, you can't blame me for this. Who told you not to be as outstanding as I am?" I didn't say a word, just kept crying uncontrollably. After my younger sister left, only then did I raise my head, with not a single tear in the corner of my eye. "You should know, in my previous life, my parents sought out me, a $1 trillion CEO. Not only did they make me transfer my assets to them, but they also used a small black snake to drain my fortune, and even demanded I provide my life essence to feed the snake. If I refuse, throw me into the serpent pit, letting thousands of small snakes tear and bite at my flesh." That excruciating pain remains vividly etched in my memory to this day. Moreover, the so-called reclusive families my parents spoke of were nothing but deceitful excuses. They deliberately left the beast-taming ring at home. Whichever of us sisters struck it rich, they'd come knocking to seize it. Thinking of my sister, she would suffer the same fate as me in this life. There is not a shred of pity in my heart. After all, in our previous life, my sister stabbed me to death without showing any remorse. Just as I was holding the little stray dog, deeply engrossed in studying the stock market trends, the little mutt in my arms suddenly started barking loudly. Hiss! I suddenly heard the sound of a snake's tongue flickering. In my previous life at the Viper Pit, I suffered greatly from this very sound. I was so terrified that I collapsed onto the ground when I looked up toward the source of the sound. It was the little black snake. It was flicking its tongue at me, its eyes revealing a human-like mockery. I stared at it in horror. "I know you've also been reborn. In this life, we'll stay out of each other's way. Why are you still coming after me?" The little black snake suddenly raised its head, lifting itself high with its tail, hissing continuously. There was still a venomous look in its eyes. I suddenly realized it was resentful because I didn't let it feed on my chi and blood in my previous life. Fury surged through me, and I pointed at the little black snake, shouting, "Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. When I hurt you, I could lock you back in the beast control ring, and in this life, I can do the same." The little mutt in my arms immediately jumped to the ground, baring its teeth at the black snake. Suddenly, my sister's anxious voice came from outside the door. "Where's my little black snake? It's gone." As my sister pushed the door open, she saw me and the little black snake staring at each other in hostility. My sister shouted, "You wretched woman, are you trying to harm my little black snake because you see it brings me good fortune? How could your heart be so malicious?" After my sister finished speaking, the little black snake immediately looked extremely wronged, directly climbing up my sister's thigh and onto her neck. Its forked tongue was still flicking against my sister's lips. I was instantly disgusted, looking at the shiny scales of the little black snake coiled around my sister's neck, feeling physically sick. 3. I picked up the little stray dog and said coldly, "It was your black snake that crawled into my room on its own. I wouldn't even want to touch such a disgusting reptile." The little black snake's triangular eyes immediately welled up with mist. It kept nuzzling against my younger sister's chin. My sister hastily gave the little black snake a kiss on the lips. "Little black snake, my sister is just jealous that you bring me wealth. We shouldn't pay attention to such petty, envious people. Once we're richer than nations, she won't even get the chance to lick our toes." I didn't take my sister's words to heart. Watching her increasingly emaciated body, I sneered coldly in my heart, thinking, "Let's see if you can last until you're wealthy enough to rival a nation." Actually, these days, Many stock investors in my sister's live stream have been commenting that she's lost weight recently, urging her to take care of her health, but my sister angrily scolded the investor, saying, "What's wrong with me being thin? Women should be slim. Are you just jealous that I'm rich and have a great figure? Don't follow my investments anymore. You're not worthy." But I knew the real reason behind my sister's weight loss had nothing to do with the stock market. It's because the little black snake frequently plunders others' financial luck and needs to feed on my sister's vital energy, but none of this has anything to do with me. However, due to my sister's interruptions, I can no longer focus wholeheartedly on observing the stock market trends. Instead, I started searching online for information about mom and dad. Money makes the mare go. Plus, I'm already a multi-millionaire now. As long as someone can answer my question online and provide clues about my parents, I won't hesitate to transfer them 1 million yuan. The results were indeed remarkable. Quickly piecing together scattered clues and combining them with memories from my past life, I uncovered the truth about my parents' staged death years ago. It turned out my parents were archaeologists who had stolen this pair of beast control rings from an ancient tomb to avoid surrendering the beast control rings. They chose to fake their deaths. Their feigned death wasn't solely to avoid surrendering the beast control rings, it was also because they discovered these rings could generate astonishing wealth, but were harmful to the wearer's health. That's why in my previous life, after seeing me become a billionaire CEO, they came knocking at my door, and in this life, since my sister became the billionaire CEO first, they naturally sought her out instead. Fabricate a lie about a reclusive family to keep my foolish younger sister firmly in my grasp. Suddenly, beads of sweat broke out on my forehead. In my previous life, even when I offered to hand over the little black snake and transfer all my assets to my parents, they still refused to let me go, and even allowed the little black snake to drain my life force. They say, even a mosquito is still meat in this life. Although I haven't made a fortune with this little mutt. My parents definitely won't let me off the hook. They also don't want the secret of the beast control ring to spread. I stared firmly at the little mutt. I must be well prepared to face my parents. Sure enough, the excuse our parents made up convinced my younger sister completely. My sister even spent a fortune to organize a family recognition gathering. The day before the gathering, my sister called me. "Tomorrow is the family recognition event I prepared for our parents. Many people know you're my sister, so you must attend." I was about to refuse, but then suddenly realized this could be an opportunity to learn about our parents' current situation, so I agreed, but my younger sister persisted relentlessly. "Although I'm generous enough to let you attend the family recognition gathering, you should understand that mom and dad are here to take me back to the family. You have no right whatsoever. Know your place." I couldn't help but laugh at my sister's words. "Those vile parents of ours, I don't need them." Amused, I replied, "If that's how you feel, maybe I shouldn't go after all. It'd save you the trouble. After all, if by chance mom and dad decide to take me back to the family instead, wouldn't that embarrass you?" My sister's voice faltered for a moment before she screamed hysterically, "Dahlia, I'm telling you, mom and dad would never take you back to the family. A worthless person like you doesn't deserve it." I didn't want to say anything more to my sister, so I bluntly stated, "Then I won't go. Someone as worthless as me doesn't deserve to attend your wedding celebration." Just as I was angrily about to hang up the phone, a heavy coughing sound came from the other end of the line, which sounded somewhat familiar to me. A male voice suddenly spoke up, "Dahlia, it's Dad. Even if we're not bringing you back into the family, you should at least come see me and your mom. Otherwise, people will say your parents are snobs who only acknowledge your wealthy younger sister but not their down-and-out older daughter." Listening to my father's unceremonious voice mocking me, I was just about to speak. My sister abruptly cut in and said bluntly, "You must attend tomorrow's wedding reception no matter what. I'm now a household name, and your absence will definitely generate negative publicity for me. I order you to attend." With that, she hung up the phone. I wasn't actually angry, because verbal taunts like this have no effect on me. I stroked the little mutt's fur, pondering for a moment. I still decided to attend the wedding reception. After all, in my past life, I knew too little about my parents. When the wedding reception was held as scheduled, and I attended as promised, as soon as my parents saw me, their faces immediately lit up with smiles, waving at me. They called out, "Dahlia, long time no see." Seeing the warm smiles on my parents' faces, I suddenly recalled the tragic experiences of my past life. In a hurry and fear, I lowered my head and whispered faintly, "Are you really my parents?" I forced my heartbeat to calm down and made my tone appear as composed as possible, pretending not to know them. I chatted with them excitedly, but unexpectedly, Dad gave a sinister smile and said bluntly, "Dahlia, why are you still pretending not to know Mom and Dad? Didn't you also get reborn? What's the point of acting like a stranger here?" Hearing these words, I nearly collapsed to my knees in fear, watching the sinister smiles on my parents' faces. Cold sweat poured down my entire body. It turned out that not only had I and the little black snake been reborn, but my malicious parents had also been reborn. I forced myself to calm down and said with a puzzled expression, "Mom, Dad, what are you talking about with this rebirth? I don't understand. How could I pretend not to know you? But there really aren't any photos of you two at home, and I have no memories of you in my mind. I genuinely don't recognize you." My parents exchanged knowing smiles. Mom directly pulled out her phone, pointing at the stocks I had recently invested in on the screen. "If you weren't reborn, how could you have invested in these stocks so accurately? Do you still want to explain?" I froze for a moment. My hands clenched behind my back until my palms bled. Forcing calm, I said, "This data came from my all-night research, and I've also had several failed stock investments. This doesn't prove I'm reborn." My parents immediately sneered and pointed at the small stray dog behind me. "What makes you think you could be reborn? If it weren't for your previous life where you donated all your assets to the orphanage and threatened suicide, do you think I would have used the beast control ring's power to let you be reborn?" At this, I was completely stunned. Turns out my rebirth was entirely orchestrated by Mom and Dad. I stared at them in disbelief. They looked at me coldly and said, "Do you know why we made the little black snake reincarnate too? Only this way could it gain enough vitality to absorb, and you, with memories from your past life as a billionaire CEO, must possess extraordinary financial luck. When the time comes, your sister will use the snake to drain your fortune. That's how your mother and I will finally become the world's richest people." I felt like I'd been plunged into an ice cellar. I always thought my rebirth was God having eyes, never imagined it was all planned by these wicked parents. In panic, I knocked over a red wine glass onto the floor. The sound of shattering glass immediately caught my sister's attention. Without a word, my sister slapped me across the face the moment she saw it. Haven't I made it clear already? Mom and Dad came today to take me back to the family. It has nothing to do with you. Did you break that cup on purpose just to grab everyone's attention? That slap from my sister snapped me out of it. I took a deep breath and kicked my sister to the ground. "Only someone like you would acknowledge such vile parents. I want nothing to do with them." My sister lay on the floor, clutching her stomach, glaring at me venomously. "You're just jealous, aren't you? Jealous that Mom and Dad aren't taking you back to the family, Dahlia. A petty person like you doesn't deserve to be my sister." With that, my younger sister turned and clung to our parents' legs, saying, "Mom, Dad, we don't need this kind of sister anyway. Now that I have money, we'll be even richer when we return to the family." My parents quickly turned to embrace my sister, watching the harmonious scene of their family of three. I simply stood up and walked away. But I hadn't gone far before turning back to scoop up my little mutt. Then I let it pee on the three of them, dog piss and all, right there in public. Their faces flushed crimson with embarrassment. They started cursing and yelling at me, yet my heart was filled with immense relief. Since last time I didn't even get a chance for revenge before my sister stabbed me to death. Consider this as collecting a small interest in advance. When the wedding ceremony concluded, Mom and Dad returned to their so-called reclusive family. My younger sister was holding the crown on the little black snake's head and said to me, "This is a gift left by Mom and Dad for me. They said it can enhance the little black snake's ability to absorb others' wealth." Seeing this crown, I was almost scared to death. With this crown on its head, the little black snake's scales became even darker, like venom. In my previous life, Mom and Dad also gave me this same crown. Despite my desperate refusal, they still placed this crown upon the little black snake's head. From then on, the little black snake's gaze became more human-like, often disobeying my commands and starting to siphon away others' fortunes. It even frequently sneaks in the dead of night while I'm asleep to secretly drain my vitality. My younger sister is now gloating proudly to me. This crown is clearly priceless, something unseen in the market. Our parents said that when I use this crown to make the little black snake siphon more fortunes from others, they'll have the confidence to appoint me as clan leader once I return to the family. By the way, sister, you probably don't know yet how magnificent our family is. We practically control the global economic lifeline, yet I had no intention of responding to my sister, instead staring fixedly at that crown. Seeing my silence, my sister assumed I was jealous of her crown and immediately covered the crown on the little black snake's head. "Listen, sister, this crown was given to me by Mom and Dad. If you dare try to take it, don't blame me for being harsh with you." Finally snapping out of it, I glanced at my sister and said coldly, "Why would I want to snatch that thing? I don't want anything to do with Mom and Dad either. Stop flaunting that worthless trinket in front of me. I have no interest in seeing it." From that day onward, my sister began to increasingly exploit the little black snake to siphon off others' wealth, while her own body withered away like a dried-up tree. Whenever netizens reminded her to take care of her health, she would lash back with insults, accusing them of being jealous of her wealth and good figure. Yet, seeing my sister's emaciated body, I couldn't help but feel uneasy in my heart. Can my sister survive for another month, seeing me sizing her up? My sister immediately turned around while holding the little black snake. She glared at me with venomous eyes. Only then did I notice that my sister's eyes had become triangular in shape. The entire person was extremely thin, with skin so dark that even foundation couldn't conceal it. My sister's voice sounded like it came from hell. Are you jealous of my good figure too? I quickly shook my head. Only then did my sister turn back with relief, saying to the live stream, "You all know my sister. Right, when I was making waves in the stock market, she secretly followed me in too, but we're like heaven and earth apart." The investors immediately started showering praise, spamming the chat nonstop. "Freya is a genius girl after all. How could your sister Dahlia ever compare to you?" But with my sharp eyes, I clearly spotted one comment saying, "Wait a minute, streamer. I think your sister is actually prettier than you. You're so skinny you're just bones." It's terrifying. I was startled and quickly excused myself to turn and leave. After all, my sister's mental state was extremely unstable at the moment, and provoking her now might lead her to stab me to death with a knife, just like in my previous life. That night, as I lay peacefully asleep in bed, the little mutt had also returned to the beast-taming ring to sleep. Suddenly, a hissing sound was heard. A cold sensation instantly brushed across my forehead when I desperately tried to open my eyes. A sticky fluid sealed them shut forcefully. I reached out and felt a slippery, elongated object sliding through my fingers, impossible to grasp no matter how hard I tried. I desperately shouted, "Little mutt, come out quick, help!" Instantly, the beast-taming ring on my wrist grew warm, and I could open my eyes again, but that elongated object had already vanished without a trace. Only my door remains, left slightly ajar with a narrow gap. The small mutt bares its teeth, glaring fiercely at the doorway. Through the reflection outside the door, I see a slender shadow standing right outside my room. Meanwhile, faint scale marks are left etched on my palm. The mucus on my face proved that everything just now was not a dream. I held the little stray dog tightly in my arms. I knew the little black snake was standing right at my door at this moment. It wasn't afraid of my little stray dog, having consumed vast amounts of fortune and my sister's vitality. It's already stronger than my little mutt now, but it's just afraid that I'll perish together with it, unable to absorb the fortune and vitality from me. I held the little mutt in my arms, staying awake all night. On the morning of the second day, my parents suddenly came to our house. Seeing my healthy appearance, they immediately looked somewhat surprised. I instantly realized that everything the little black snake did last night was controlled by my parents through the crown. I looked at my parents with a forced smile. "What, are you here to pick up my sister?" My parents were about to speak, but suddenly, my sister rushed out from the room. The entire figure was like a walking skeleton, emitting a foul stench that filled the air, directly approaching my parents. With a venomous glare at me, Mom and Dad came for me. "It's none of your business, get back to your room now." I pursed my lips, not wanting to say another word, and turned back to my room. But as I left, I clearly heard the younger sister asked her parents when they could take her back to the hidden family, but her parents' reply was, "You need to wait at home a little longer, endure for a while more." I closed the door and slumped against the wall onto the floor, gasping heavily for air. The reason my parents made my sister wait was to let the little black snake completely drain my fortune and vitality. 5. I can't just sit here waiting for death, looking at the little stray dog in my hands. I suddenly asked a bizarre question, little dog, can you restore my sister's memories from her past life?" But unexpectedly, the puppy actually spoke. "Of course, master, you've been so kind to me. It's time for me to repay you." I was instantly overjoyed, but there was no time left to chat with the puppy now. I hurried to the supermarket and bought a large amount of food for the little mutt. As the little mutt was about to devour the food in front of it, I said with some concern, "Puppy, actually I've been reborn. In my previous life, you were my sister's tamed beast, and it was because you ate too much food that you exploded and died. Now that you're making me eat so much food for your sake, nothing unexpected will happen, right?" The puppy grinned with an almost human-like smile. "Of course not, master. These days, you've had me gradually eat food without spitting gold coins. My abilities are already extraordinary, you can rest assured." When the little mutt finished eating, it weakly spat out a pill. It told me, as long as Freya takes this pill, she can recover the memories of her past life. With that said, he turned and returned to the beast control ring. I stroked the beast ring with some heartache, after quietly apologizing to the puppy. Then, under the moonlight, I made my way to my younger sister's room. The moment I entered the room, my sister sat up with a scream. At this moment, her hair had already fallen out, and she looked at me with a cold expression, saying, "What are you here for? To mock my secret of wearing a wig? To laugh at my misfortune?" I didn't respond but instead looked around and asked my sister, "Where's your little black snake?" My sister's voice was as hoarse as a broken bellows. "So you're here to steal my little black snake, you wretch? I knew you were up to no good. My little black snake has already gone to feed on someone else's fortune. Don't even think about taking it away from me." Upon learning the little black snake wasn't there, I quietly sat down by my sister's bedside. Seeing the venomous resentment in my sister's eyes, I sighed and revealed the secret of my rebirth to my sister, and told her that the beast control ring was our parents' scheme, but I concealed the fact that she had stabbed me with a knife. After hearing this, my younger sister expressed disbelief, saying I was just trying to trick her out of her little black snake. Seeing this, I forcibly pried open my sister's mouth and threw the small pill inside. My sister coughed a few times and instantly fell unconscious. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with tears. She hugged me crying and said, "Sister, I'm truly not human. I actually stabbed you to death with a knife. Please forgive me, sister." Yet I clearly saw a trace of coldness in my sister's eyes. She wasn't truly repentant, but knew she wouldn't survive much longer without my help. I pretended not to notice and played along with my sister's tragic act. When it was all over, my sister couldn't wait to ask me, "Sister, how should we deal with those cruel parents now?" My eyes darted around, and after a moment of thought, I leaned down to whisper a few words into my sister's ear. Upon hearing this, my sister immediately cast a spell to summon her little black snake home. Meanwhile, I stood behind the door, smearing myself with the feces my sister had involuntarily left on the bed. When I heard the hissing sound, I immediately prepared myself. As soon as the little black snake pushed the door open, I immediately snatched the crown off its head. The little black snake was shocked and instantly lunged at me, but it was magically captured back into the beast control ring by my younger sister. I smiled at my sister and said, "Tomorrow you'll call our parents and tell them the little black snake drained my vitality and fortune, causing me to die tragically at home." After hearing this, a ruthless expression appeared on my sister's face. The next day, as I lay on the bed pretending to be dead, my sister opened the door cheerfully to welcome our parents' arrival. Mom and Dad stroked Freya's head and praised, "Freya did such a great job. Let Mom and Dad handle your sister's body. We have a 10,000 snake pit artifact. We'll throw her body in to feed the snakes." Lying on the bed, I sneered inwardly without changing my expression. When Mom and Dad stood by my bed and opened the 10,000 snake pit artifact, just as they were about to throw me in, Freya suddenly slashed their wrists with a knife. Our parents cried out in pain, and the 10,000 snake cave magical artifact fell from their hands, just as my younger sister was about to pick it up. I rolled off the bed and grabbed it first. My sister awkwardly smiled and said, "Sis, I was just planning to throw this harmful thing into the trash." I smiled without saying a word. The parents immediately pointed at the younger sister and cursed, "You vile wretch, how dare you conspire with your sister to frame me?" The younger sister smirked triumphantly and threw the beast control ring in her hand to the ground. "You two despicable creatures. You made the little black snake drain my life force and fabricated stories about a hidden family to deceive me. If not for my sister helping me awaken memories from my past life, I would have truly become your puppet." As she spoke, the younger sister's expression grew increasingly sinister. She began slicing flesh from their parents' bodies with a small knife, subjecting them to unbearable agony. Witnessing this nauseating scene before their eyes, I stood directly behind my younger sister and waved my hand to open the snake pit. I threw both my parents and my sister inside. My sister clung to the edge of the snake pit, looking at me in disbelief. "Sister, what are you doing? Why are you throwing me in?" I chuckled softly and pried her fingers off one by one. "If I'm not mistaken, after you deal with our parents, I'll be next, won't I? Do you secretly hate me? Hate me for taking your little earth dog beast ring in this life, which led you to this fate?" Seeing that I had voiced her innermost thoughts, my younger sister immediately shot me a venomous glare, hurling all sorts of curses at me, but I merely smiled faintly and threw her directly into the snake pit. Listening to the agonized cries of the three of them, along with the hissing of tens of thousands of snakes, I instantly felt my scalp crawl. Without hesitation, I sealed the snake pit artifact shut and tossed it onto the furnace. He took the opportunity to add a few more charcoal fires. Meanwhile, the beast ring of the little black snake was faintly trembling on the ground. There were even signs of it breaking free from the ring. I directly summoned the little earth dog and had it devour the little black snake's beast ring, but to my surprise, after the little mutt devoured the small black snake, it actually transformed into a 1.8-meter tall handsome guy with long legs. With his handsome face and his innate ability to spit out gold coins when eating, he was practically a rich second-generation heir. Watching the little mutt kneel on one knee, holding roses to propose to me, I hurriedly covered my face and ran away. This won't do. Humans and beasts cannot be together. But the little stray dog stubbornly chased after me, shouting loudly, "Dahlia, I love you. My love for you has broken societal norms. And I will definitely make you fall for me. It drew sidelong glances from passers-by. Story 2. My father brought back his illegitimate daughter from outside and even claimed that I was a fake daughter who had been switched at birth. I coldly watched him spout nonsense in front of my mother and even readily agreed to his unreasonable request to move out of the main residence. Later, the end of the world came, and zombies surrounded the city. My mother and I hid in the constructed fortress, enjoying delicious food and playing poker. However, he was brutally pushed into the horde of zombies by his illegitimate daughter and ended up with no trace of his remains. 1. I was reborn a week before the zombie outbreak. It happened to be the day when George brought his illegitimate daughter, Margot, home. The stench of zombies and the unwillingness and resentment of being killed by my own biological father still lingered in my body. When I opened my eyes again, I saw that twisted face appear in front of me once more. And the timid girl behind him was the one who had killed my mother. Mom, Miss Margot. Margot tugged at the hem of George's clothes with one hand and spoke in a trembling voice, looking every bit like an innocent little rabbit. In my previous life, I was deceived by her appearance. I wholeheartedly believed that I had usurped the glory and wealth that rightfully belonged to her, even after the end of the world arrived. I did everything in my power to protect Margot. But it wasn't until I was on the verge of death that I learned that Margot was by no means the so-called real daughter. She was just the illegitimate child born to that man and his mistress outside. Bringing her back specifically when my mother was sick was just a scheme to inherit the family fortune rightfully after getting rid of us. Even my mother, whom I had thought died in an accident, was actually killed by Margot. My enemies were right in front of me. Yet I couldn't exact revenge immediately. I could only dig my nails into my palm, trying my best to appear normal. However, when our eyes met, I still couldn't completely hide my hatred. She seemed to be startled by me and shrank back behind George. George immediately glared at me and said sternly, "Eliza, why are you scaring your sister?" Yes, I took my mother's surname, because of this. George had always disliked me. He thought I was a symbol of his cowardice and a testament to his loss of male dignity, but he never stopped to think that without my mother and the Eliza family, where would he be today? Swaggering around as Mr. George, my mother reached out and put her arm around my shoulders, pulling me closer to her. I looked up and saw my mother furrowing her brows, her eyes darting back and forth between George and Margot. "Are you saying that she is our daughter? And Eliza was just switched at the hospital?" George nodded eagerly. "Yes, my dear, look at Margot, she looks so much like you." He pulled Margot in front of my mother. Margot wore a nervous smile on her face but still instinctively tried to curry favor with my mother. Mom, to be honest, Margot didn't resemble my mother at all. At best, she was just pretty, not a fraction as beautiful as my mother. I wondered what on earth George was thinking to say such things. Sure enough, my mother's gaze shifted from Margot to me. She reached out and stroked my head, saying, "This is no small matter. I won't believe that Eliza isn't my child just because of your words. We'll discuss this further when the hospital brings the genetic test results." My mother took over my grandfather's company after graduating from university. Over the years, she couldn't possibly be an innocent girl, unfortunately. In my previous life, we never got to see that genetic test report. Instead, we waited for the zombies to surround the city. Looking at my gentle-eyed mother, I made up my mind that I must save her in this life. George rarely disagreed with what my mother said at home, and this time was no exception, but I guessed that he had already bribed the hospital. Otherwise, my mother's health wouldn't have been deteriorating so rapidly. However, during dinner, George set his sights on me again. "Eliza, although your mother said we should wait for the genetic test results, I think it might be a bit awkward for you to live with Margot. How about you go and stay at the old mansion for a while? When the results come out, Dad will bring you back. Didn't you say before that it's too noisy living in the city center?" As soon as George finished speaking, the sound of forks and knives clattering on the table stopped. I lowered my head and curled the corners of my mouth. As expected, he couldn't wait any longer. In my previous life, he tried to drive me out of the house in this way, but my mother stopped him. As a result, when the food at home ran out, in order to escape, they pushed me into the horde of zombies. But this time, I won't let that happen. My mother put down her fork and was about to speak, but I gently pressed her thigh under the table. Under her puzzled gaze, I gave George a gentle smile. "Dad, you're so considerate, but can I take Mom with me? It's less populated there, which is better for Mom's recovery, too." George's eyes lit up, and he immediately agreed, as if afraid I would change my mind. After dinner, George took Margot to choose a bedroom, while I followed my mother to the study. As soon as the door closed, my mother frowned and asked, "What's wrong with you today? Your father clearly wants to drive you out of the house." I helped my mother sit down on the chair, then took her arm and leaned my head on her shoulder. Since I was a child, my mother wasn't a gentle person. On the contrary, She was stricter with me and had higher expectations, because I was destined to inherit the Eliza family's business. Since my mother got sick, I entered the company. On the surface, I was assisting George, but in reality, I was in charge of all the company's business, big and small. That's why George was so eager to bring his illegitimate daughter home. The faint sandalwood scent of my mother lingered at the tip of my nose, gradually calming the emotions that had been stirred up by seeing George. When I closed my eyes, all I could see was the image of my mother after her death. She fell in the garden at home. Margot said my mother fell from the window. The passing zombies pounced on her and started feasting, and I could do nothing but watch helplessly. I couldn't even ensure that she had a whole body after death. Eliza, you're acting very strange today. What's going on? My mother noticed my body shaking. After pulling out her arm, she gently stroked my back. I opened my eyes and looked at her, let out a long sigh, and said solemnly, Mom, do you trust me? Of course. So I told her everything that happened to me in my previous life. The more I spoke, the uglier my mother's expression became. After I finished telling her how I was pushed into the horde of zombies by Margot and the others, her face turned as dark as ink. I looked at my silent mother nervously, feeling a sense of unease. The end of the world and zombies were such fantastical things that it was hard for ordinary people to accept their existence. I even prepared myself for the situation where my mother might think I was joking and refuse to go to the old mansion with me. I was willing to stay here and find a way to kill Margot and George if necessary, but my mother just pulled me into her arms. Since I grew up, my mother and I rarely had such intimate moments. Her warm embrace, soft body, and the faint smell of medicine made me feel as if I were in a dream. Eliza, I'm sorry, you've been through so much. It must have been so painful to be killed by your own father. I'm sorry for giving you such a father. My mother's gentle voice reached my ears. The hand that I had just been about to use to hug her back froze in mid-air. The next second, I hugged her even tighter. Before I even realized it, tears were streaming down my face, wetting my mother's clothes. It turned out that I had always been so scared, so terrified, and also so desperate and resentful. Mom, she held me, listening quietly to my sobs without saying a word, but I knew that her embrace was the best comfort. In the end, my mother agreed to go to the old mansion with me and believed everything I said. In my mother's words, if the end of the world didn't come, it would be like spending money to ease my mind. After all, the Eliza family could afford it. As for George and the others, even if they lived a little longer, it wouldn't matter. A grasshopper can jump as high as it wants, but it's still just a grasshopper. Early the next morning, the butler told me that George and Margot had gone out, seemingly to buy clothes for Margot. The butler looked at me hesitantly. I knew he didn't like George. He was already quite old and had basically watched my mother grow up. Naturally, he didn't want his young lady to spend her life with such a man. I patted the butler's shoulder and said softly, It's okay, Harrison, he won't be able to act recklessly for long. I didn't tell the butler about the end of the world. I just told him to come to the old mansion to find us 6 days later and bring all the servants in the house with him. The butler was confused but agreed anyway. If I remembered correctly, most of the servants in the house died because of George after the end of the world came in my previous life. Due to his greed and cowardice, he used them as guinea pigs, and they died desperately in the mouths of zombies. Before my mother and I left, we installed surveillance cameras in every corner of the villa so that we could know George's latest situation in the first place. Moreover, we could also figure out which people in the villa had secretly sided with George. Although peeking isn't good, but looking at one's own home, how can it be called peeking? The old mansion of the Eliza family was located far from the city center, surrounded by mountains and water and sparsely populated. People in the circle used to joke that being sent to the old mansion of the Eliza family was no different from being exiled to the border, but in the apocalypse, such a place offered the greatest chance of survival. The car stopped at the gate of the old mansion. I looked up at the building that resembled a castle and once again marveled at the wealth of the Eliza family. My mother walked up and pushed open the gate. What greeted us was a garden that hadn't been tended to for a long time. In the middle of the garden was a dried-up fountain. The entire garden was surrounded by golden railings, and further in was the castle itself. This old mansion has been passed down in the Eliza family for generations, although it's a bit desolate. It has the advantage of being large in area and having many floors. It can easily accommodate dozens of people, my mother said as she opened the door. The Eliza family's business spanned the world, with cooperative institutions even abroad. It was a truly prosperous family that had been thriving since 100 years ago. However, from the previous generation, the family had few offspring. By my mother's generation, she was the only child. My grandparents couldn't bear to marry my mother off. So they could only recruit a son-in-law, but families with some wealth were reluctant to give up their family property, and my mother didn't fancy those from ordinary families. George was the one they carefully selected. He was an intellectual with a high degree, had good manners, and wouldn't embarrass the family in public. He was gentle and caring towards my mother, making him the perfect choice for marriage, but at that time, no one knew that George had a pregnant first love. And he himself was a beast in human clothing. My mother waved her phone at me. The photo clearly showed George and Margot picking out bags in a Chanel store. They were already carrying numerous bags, looking more like they were stocking up at the mall. And Audrey sent me these photos and asked me what was going on. And Audrey and my mother had been friends since childhood and had always disliked George. My mother briefly told Aunt Audrey about the current situation and also subtly suggested that she stock up on more supplies at home recently. Aunt Audrey didn't know the reason, but due to my mother's status, she thought it was some confidential information. There were only 6 days left until the end of the world. The time left for my mother and me was running out. In order to survive longer in the apocalypse, my mother and I decided to split up and act. She could use her status to buy firearms and some large items that ordinary people couldn't get, while I would go to buy food and daily necessities that might be needed in the apocalypse. But the most important thing at the moment was to clean the house. I casually touched the wall and ended up with a handful of dust, but when I looked up at the tall building, my calves started to tremble. I was about to turn around and ask my mother what to do when she had already picked up the phone to make a call and raised an eyebrow at me. There aren't many things in this world that money can't solve. In just half an hour, dozens of cleaners were standing outside the castle. My reaction, for my mother went out while I was cleaning the house. She answered a phone call and sounded very anxious. She only had time to say hello to me. I didn't idle around either. I got the contact information of the workers who could help renovate the land from the butler and immediately invited them to the house to renovate the entire yard. This time, instead of planting flowers, we would plant vegetables and fruits. Although I didn't know how long it would take for them to grow, I thought that with the long apocalypse, we would surely wait for the day when they matured. After negotiating with the workers who would renovate the land, I met with the construction workers. They were here to renovate the garden wall. I planned to build the wall higher to prevent zombies from entering the garden. Even the garden gate would be replaced with an iron gate. Originally, the workers told me that such a large-scale project couldn't be completed in a short time, but when I offered a high price, he called all his colleagues and promised to work day and night to get the job done. Seeing that everyone was performing their respective duties, I started to open the shopping app and purchased a large quantity of frozen food from the internet. The castle, including the basement, has a total of 5 floors. The basement can be used to store various vegetables, while frozen food must be kept in the refrigerator. I plan to put it on the top floor. Although there is an elevator in the castle, it has been damaged due to years of disuse, and I didn't intend to repair it when the apocalypse really comes. Electricity will become a very scarce resource. Even if solar panels are installed at that time, it's better to use the electricity for more practical purposes rather than for the elevator. I carefully selected and bought a lot of vegetables that are easy to store online, such as corn, potatoes, etc. Besides, I also bought instant noodles and self-heating hot pots for emergencies. As for seasonings, I bought whatever I saw, purchasing them in dozens of bottles. The same goes for mineral water. When one supermarket didn't have enough, I switched to several others and almost emptied them out. My mother didn't return home until sunset. A large truck was following her car, and I was stunned when I saw it parked outside. I immediately rushed to my mother, who had just got out of the car, and asked, "Mom, what did you buy?" My mother had a smile on her face, perhaps because of excitement. Her face, which had been somewhat pale due to illness, now looked much rosier. The truck behind also stopped. When the trunk was opened, it turned out to be filled with large-scale fitness equipment and 3 freezers. I thought that if we didn't exercise at home all day, our physical fitness would definitely not keep up. What if we need to abandon the castle and run away? Our weak arms and legs wouldn't do, so I simply bought the fitness equipment so that we can exercise at home, my mother said in a low voice. I couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. Taking advantage of the time when the workers were moving the items, I told her all the preparations I had made that afternoon. After listening, my mother reached out and touched my head. "No wonder you're my daughter, you really think things through. I'll go buy a large SUV tomorrow and have it modified. Then, if we run out of supplies later, we can drive out to look for more." After the workers left, I closed the door and turned to look at my mother. She was sitting on the sofa playing with her phone, with freshly washed fruits beside her. "Mom, what did you do this afternoon?" I asked someone to find a way and prepared some good stuff for us. As she said that, she made a shooting gesture with her hand. Seeing that my mother couldn't bear to take her eyes off the phone screen, I simply sat beside her. It turned out that she was watching the surveillance of our house, without us there. Margot and George had obviously regarded the villa as their own home. Margot was sitting on the sofa, casually spitting sunflower seeds on the carpet worth tens of thousands of yuan. The clothes she was wearing seemed to be the high-end custom-made ones for my wardrobe. She had gemstone rings on all 10 fingers and even wore the diamond crown I bought when I was 18 on her head. As for George, he seemed to be much more restrained than Margot, however. He opened all the wine stored in the house and got himself drunk, constantly cursing my mother and me. I secretly glanced at my mother's expression, seeing that she didn't seem too sad. I couldn't help but ask, "Mom, why did you get together with George in the first place?" 5. My mother closed the surveillance app on her phone, then sighed and turned to gently stroke my hair. When I was young, I was easily deceived by appearances. By the time I realized something was wrong, it was already too late, but fortunately, everything can start anew now. I held my mother's hand and nodded firmly. The soil in the yard had all been turned over. I hired workers to plant the seeds in the soil. He told me a lot of precautions for planting, and I wrote them down one by one, planning to tell the butler later, if I were to take care of them myself. I'm afraid they would all die on the first day of the apocalypse. As for the fountain, which had been refilled with water, I didn't waste it. I threw a few Crucian carps into it. When my mother came back in the evening, most of the daily necessities at home had been stocked up. I also bought dozens of large-capacity power banks and fully charged them. Although there would be no signal in the apocalypse, we could still watch the TV dramas and movies downloaded on our phones and tablets to pass the time. She brought workers to install solar charging panels on the rooftop, while the workers were installing them. My mother and I spent the whole day watching the surveillance of the villa. Today, many employees in the company had been persuaded by George to betray my mother and me. I wrote down their names one by one and sent their photos to the butler. Towards evening, George and Margot changed into formal attire and left in a luxury car. My mother said softly, "There's a charity gala tonight, they should be going to attend it." During the time when my mother and I were away, George seemed to have really regarded himself as the leader of the company. He not only bossed around my subordinates but also claimed outside that Margot was his biological daughter. As a result, these days, I received a lot of inquiry messages. Everyone wanted to know whether what George said was true or false. There's not much true affection in the wealthy circles, if what he said was true. Those shareholders and young masters and ladies who had supported me before would turn around and flatter Margot. I felt a little uneasy. My inaction in company affairs these days had made many people complain about my mother and me. If the apocalypse didn't come on time, my mother and I would surely be impeached by the shareholders. By then, it would take more time and effort to deal with George. I turned to my mother and asked, "Mom, if the apocalypse doesn't come, did I do something wrong?" My mother put down her phone, looked at me, and said gently, "Eliza, I know I used to always tell you that you must have 100% certainty before taking action, so that you can stay invincible, but now, I want to tell you that everyone fails sometimes, even I. The biggest failure in my life was getting together with George, but it was also the most successful thing I've ever done because you came into my life, so don't worry about whether what you did is right or wrong. Perhaps everything is predestined." Looking into my mother's eyes, I felt a sharp pain in my nose and nodded firmly. The news that George attended the event with Margot quickly made it to the trending topics. Everyone was speculating whether the Eliza Group would be renamed. In the photos, George looked radiant and his face was ruddy. People who didn't know might think he had already become the chairman of the Eliza Group. My mother's phone vibrated twice. It was a message from George, pretending to tell my mother not to believe the rumors on the internet and that he and Margot were waiting for us to go back. I'm afraid even if they knelt down and begged us, we wouldn't set foot in that house again. My mother and I didn't stop for a moment in the following days, just to turn this castle into an impregnable fortress. Finally, the day before the apocalypse arrived, all the projects were completed. The 2-story high fence, the thick iron gate. In order to prevent anyone from climbing over the fence, my mother even wrapped a lot of thorns on top. The yard was filled with vegetables and fruits that were easy to store. The first floor of the castle had the fitness equipment, the second floor was for accommodation, the third floor stored daily necessities like tissues and clothes for all seasons. To prevent sudden temperature changes, I even bought a lot of thick quilts. The fourth floor was filled with freezers, all stuffed with meat products, and the small attic held firearms. As for vegetables and drinking water, I put them in the basement. I even bought 3 huge iron boxes to store tap water. During these days, while the water pipes were still working normally, I had already filled 1 box, so that we could still do some simple cleaning work after the apocalypse arrived. On the night of the 6th day, the butler, along with the servants he brought from the villa, knocked on our door. Seeing the facilities in the castle, the butler opened his mouth wide and stammered, "Miss, madam, what is all this?" My mother patted him on the shoulder and said solemnly, "Welcome to the Doomsday Fortress, 6. My mother and I explained the current situation to them in the simplest terms. It was still hard for people to accept the idea of the end of the world. Fortunately, the servants the butler brought had worked in the family for most of their lives. Even if they didn't believe it in their hearts, they wouldn't refute what my mother and I said. They had absolute loyalty. After the butler led them to put their luggage in their respective rooms, they started to go about their usual work as before. Looking at the chefs working orderly in the kitchen, my mother and I lay on the sofa and let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, the chefs came with us, otherwise, with my mother's and my cooking skills, we might have poisoned ourselves in the apocalypse. Before dinner, George called my mother's phone. His voice sounded a little anxious, and he didn't even bother to pretend his usual tenderness. "Where are all the servants in the house? Did you call them away?" Upon hearing this, my mother just leisurely picked her ear, as if she had heard something dirty, and then said, "They are servants of the Eliza family, and have nothing to do with you. Even if I did call them away, so what?" George seemed to take 2 deep breaths to calm himself down. He probably realized that he couldn't completely fall out with my mother yet. "Honey, don't talk nonsense. Ask them to come back quickly. Aren't you and Eliza coming back too? How can I rest assured if there's no one to take care of you at home?" On the surface, George seemed to be only concerned about my mother's and my life, but through the surveillance, I could see his ugly face clearly. Full of hatred, my mother chuckled and said, "George, do you really think I don't know what you're up to? You know very well what Margot's true identity is. My mother and I won't be coming back. George, it's over between us." "Honey, what are you talking about?" Before George could finish, my mother hung up the phone, watching him smash his phone in anger and then look pained on the surveillance. I laughed so hard that I couldn't straighten up. Just then, the butler came to call my mother and me to the dining table. My mother and I were the only 2 people sitting at the huge dining table, which made it seem rather empty and lonely. My mother said, "Harrison, go and call all the servants in the house. Let's all sit down and eat together." "Madam, this isn't proper. Who knows what will happen after tonight? There's no need to worry so much about what's proper or not." The butler still hesitated, but after being glared at by my mother, he quickly went to call the others. Before long, the previously empty dining table was filled with people. My mother specially opened a bottle of red wine and filled everyone's glasses. Then she stood up, raised her glass, and swept her gaze across everyone's faces, her eyes filled with tears. "All of you have worked for the Eliza family for most of your lives. Many of you have watched me and Eliza grow up. Here, I want to thank you all for everything you've done for the Eliza family. The things I told you today were told to me by Eliza. We'll know whether it's true or false tonight. I only have one thing to say, that is, whether the end of the world really comes or not. In my heart, you are just like my family. I hope none of you will be missing." After saying that, my mother drank the red wine in her glass in one gulp. I saw the butler secretly wiping his tears with a napkin. At 10 o'clock at night, an extremely huge meteor streaked across the sky, followed by the shaking of the floor, just like an earthquake. Sitting on the sofa, I involuntarily clenched my fists. I knew that everything had begun. The apocalypse had finally arrived. A warm hand gently placed on the back of my hand. I turned my head and met my mother's gaze. Her eyes gave me great encouragement and comfort. "This life is different from the previous one. I have my mother, and we will get through this." 7. On the first night of the apocalypse, no one in the castle could fall asleep. Everyone gathered in the living room, straining their ears to listen to the sounds outside. According to my experience from my previous life, the mutation started from the city center. The falling meteor created a giant sinkhole, and the radiation from outer space infected many people. Our castle is located in the suburbs. Although there aren't many people around, it's only a matter of time before fleeing humans and foraging zombies find us. My mother turned on the TV, and every channel was showing news broadcasts. The host, who always had a faint smile and a calm, indifferent tone, now looked disheveled, with beads of sweat on his forehead. According to reliable information, the meteor that landed in City S tonight carried unknown radiation. Anyone who comes into contact with it will lose consciousness and become a zombie that attacks humans indiscriminately. We urge all citizens to lock their doors and windows, stay indoors, and wait for rescue. I repeat, we urge all citizens to lock their doors and windows, stay indoors, and wait for rescue. As soon as the host finished speaking, the cameraman was knocked down by something unknown. The camera fell to the ground, and the last image captured was just a pool of blood and continuous screams. No one made a sound in the living room. Everyone was greatly frightened by this scene. It was not until a long time later that someone's suppressed sobs were heard. I held my mother's hand tightly, and my cold body seemed to come back to life at this moment. Our son is still working outside. What should we do? It was the family's nanny who spoke. She and the butler had been married for many years and they had only one son who was still working outside. They didn't know if there would be a chance to see him again in this life. The butler reached out and hugged her in his arms, comforting her gently. I felt somewhat helpless. Although I had been reborn for a lifetime, I still couldn't save everyone. Saving them was already the best I could do. Eliza. Don't blame yourself. No one will blame you. You've done a great job. My mother seemed to see the sadness in my heart. She pinched my face, and her tone was as gentle as ever. I smiled at her, and the feeling of powerlessness in my heart finally dissipated a little. That night, everyone curled up in the living room, comforting each other. No one thought of George and Margot because, in the face of their own life safety, those beasts were insignificant. It was not until the sun shone through the window the next day that everyone came back to their senses from the fatigue of staying up all night. The butler was the first to cheer up. He called on everyone to live a normal life. There were a lot of supplies in the castle. As long as they were used properly, they would surely be able to hold out until the country found them. He said that they couldn't let down the great efforts of the miss and the madam. Inspired by the butler, everyone finally regained their former vitality. The previously lifeless castle started to operate again, and he volunteered to go to the attic to observe the situation around the castle. My mother and I were lounging on the sofa with nothing to do, so we opened the surveillance again. George and Margot were in their respective rooms, and their faces didn't look good. They seemed to have been greatly frightened by what happened last night. After they left their rooms, they all went to the kitchen. However, due to their wanton behavior in the past few days, the food stored at home had long been consumed completely. George and Margot looked at each other, but after some discussion, neither of them was willing to step out of the room to look for food. They could only fill their stomachs with snacks. In the once prosperous area, there was no other sound except for the screams of people and the roars of zombies. They didn't dare to stay in the living room for long. After eating, they went upstairs again. Under my control, the surveillance camera rotated slightly towards the window, and I saw the zombies wandering outside the window, their ragged faces, grayish-green skin, and the sticky blood on their faces. Just seeing them through the phone, my mother and I couldn't help feeling nauseous. Fortunately, we can't see such monsters in our house. Yes, I just don't know how long Margot and the others can last. My mother and I looked at each other and smiled. Finally, we found something interesting in this dull apocalypse, but we didn't expect that in just 3 days, they had already used human lives to exchange for food. 8, to be honest. Apart from occasionally smelling the bloody smell in the air, there were no major problems with life in the castle. As time went by, occasionally there would be a few zombies staggering outside the castle. In order to train my courage, my mother asked the butler to teach me how to shoot. The main way was to stand in the attic and shoot the zombies downstairs through the small window. However, my aim was really not good. Many times, I almost shot the small saplings in the garden, and the gardener was so scared that he almost knelt down to me. But it still added some fun to the boring life. That night, my mother somehow took out a deck of playing cards and insisted on playing cards with us to pass the time. All the servants who were slow to escape were caught by her. Halfway through the game, I lost everything. I really couldn't take it anymore, so I firmly grabbed the butler to take my place, and then happily went to my mother's side to play with my phone. As soon as I opened the surveillance, I saw George and Margot huddled together in the dim living room, not knowing what they were plotting. The food in their house had long been eaten up. No, their eyes were bloodshot and red, but their expressions were extremely calm. It was not until the sound of footsteps came from behind them that I realized it was the servant who had stayed in the villa before. "Sir, what do you want me for?" The apocalypse came suddenly, and some servants who used to live together in the house didn't have time to go back. Instead, they were locked up with George and the others. George had a smile on his face that made my hair stand on end, and I immediately felt a sense of alarm in my heart. The last time he showed such a smile was when he pushed me into the horde of zombies. "Well, the food at home is all gone. We hope you can go to the nearby supermarket and take a look." The servant looked terrified. At the beginning of the apocalypse, people were still afraid of zombies. Without thinking, he shook his head and refused. "Sir, there are zombies outside. I can't do it." After being refused, George's face immediately fell, and he said sternly to him, "I'm your boss, you have to do what I say. Besides, when all the food at home is gone, we'll only die. It's better to take a chance now." But the servant still didn't want to go out. He stepped back, trying to return to his room, but bumped into Margot, who had somehow bypassed him and stood behind him. Margot was holding a fruit knife in her hand, and the dim light made her look like a demon from hell. "Are you going or not? If you don't go, I'll kill you right now." The man knelt down on the ground with a thud, kowtowing and begging for mercy, but George and the others didn't show any mercy. They almost dragged the man out of the villa and threw him out. After that, George wiped the sweat off his face. let out a sigh of relief, and said, "Even if he doesn't bring back any food, there's one less mouth to feed." Margot nodded, fully agreeing. After watching this scene, I broke out in a cold sweat, as if I had seen the ending of My Mother and Me in my previous life. Fortunately, no. I looked up at my mother. She was sitting on the ground, laughing heartily as she gathered up her winnings. Fortunately, none of that has happened yet. I was very curious about the fate of the servant who was thrown out. So I kept holding my phone and paying attention to the situation in the surveillance. My mother noticed this and asked me the reason. After thinking for a moment, I told her what George and the others had done. After hearing this, my mother let out a deep sigh. I originally thought he was just greedy and stupid. Now it seems that he is a complete sinner. After the sun set that day, the servant actually came back. Not only did he come back, but he even brought food, but George didn't let him in. They locked him outside the door on the grounds that he had a wound on his arm, even though the other party strongly explained that it was just a scratch. In the end, through the surveillance, I heard the screams of the other party being bitten by the zombies. 9. It had been a full month since the apocalypse arrived. The supplies in the castle had decreased, but fortunately, there were still a lot left. During this month, George had used his old tricks to kill all the servants in the villa. But even so, he and Margot were losing weight at a visible speed. In contrast, my mother and I had been eating and drinking well every day during this period and were also diligent in exercising. We even looked healthier than before the apocalypse. Except for us, everyone in the house didn't resist the daily exercise routine. After a period of time, even the butler had a few more abs. It wasn't that we hadn't encountered passers-by who tried to break in by force at night, but they were scared away by our gunshots. The high walls surrounded the castle, protecting it like an isolated Noah's Ark. As early as 2 days ago, through the surveillance, I heard George and the others planning to escape from the villa. The main reason was that even if they continued to stay at home, without food, it was just a dead end. Sure enough, my mother's gaze shifted from Margot to me, and she reached up to touch my head, saying, "This is not a small matter. I won't believe that Eliza isn't my child just because of your words." I directly projected the surveillance onto the TV and called on everyone in the house to watch it together. In an instant, the sofa was filled with people, and there were freshly fried French fries placed in front of them. Everyone held their breath and watched the TV. They saw George push open the door and observe the situation at the door. After a while, since there were still no zombies passing by, George let out a long sigh of relief and then waved his hand to Margot behind him. Margot followed closely behind him, still holding a fruit knife in her hand. After a month, the two of them appeared under the blue sky again, and the excitement and nervousness on their faces couldn't be hidden. Unfortunately, the observation range of the surveillance was limited. If they really left the villa, it would be difficult for us to monitor their every move. There was a look of reluctance in my mother's eyes. After all, this was our only entertainment during this period. However, something unexpected happened. A zombie suddenly emerged from the grass beside the villa and pounced towards Margot. From the angle of the surveillance, we could only see that at the critical moment of life and death, Margot pushed George towards the zombie and then turned around and ran back into the villa and slammed the door shut. The action was smooth and without the slightest hesitation. After watching it, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Awesome." George's screams were continuous, but Margot pressed against the door tightly from beginning to end. The veins on her neck were bulging, and it was obvious that she was using all her strength. The screams outside gradually stopped, and the strength in Margot's hands also relaxed. She looked outside through a small piece of glass on the door. Except for George's disfigured body lying on the ground, it was completely silent. Margot clenched the fruit knife and actually opened the door again. However, what was waiting for her was the zombie lurking by the door. Amid Margot's screams, she was knocked down to the ground by the zombie, and I finally saw the appearance of the zombie clearly. It was the man they had locked outside the door and killed that day. My mother and I looked at each other, and we both saw the word deserved in each other's eyes. There was still a long time left in the apocalypse, and I didn't know if we could live until the day when everything ended, but at least, my mother and I witnessed George's death with our own eyes. It could be considered as avenging what happened in my previous life. A year after the apocalypse arrived, the supplies in the castle had decreased by more than half, and my mother became visibly anxious. She even started to think about how to drive the modified SUV out to look for supplies. But on that day, when the sun was shining brightly, we heard the roar of a car outside. The camouflage-patterned car was driving on the empty road, and the flag on the roof was so bright that it made people want to cry. The army is here for support. Story 2. It's been 56 days since the zombie outbreak. My best friend and I were sitting next to a fragrant hot pot filled with spicy red oil, nervously watching the footage from the surveillance room as we cooked slices of meat. There, a living person appeared. 1. My name is Isla, a well-known wealthy heiress in City C. On March 4th, 2530, the zombie apocalypse descended. I happened to own a hot pot restaurant. which allowed me to escape the zombie massacre in the city, but it wasn't really my doing. It was all thanks to my dear friend Ruby, too. 9 months ago, starting a business, Ruby placed some tripe into my bowl with her chopsticks and whispered, "Calm down, keep it down." No, but why would you have such a risky idea? Stop beating around the bush, just tell me if you're in or not. I stared at the swirling kelp in the spicy broth and hesitated. Well, it's not about the money, you know my dad warned me, with the fortune he saved, I can afford to live a life of leisure. But there's one thing I should never touch. Starting a business, I sighed. Besides, I don't have enough money to start a business. Just give me the money you use for supporting Liam, that should be enough, Ruby said shockingly. Cough, cough, cough. I choked and coughed repeatedly. She raised an eyebrow. Am I right? Look at you, I said. Can you call it supporting? With such a natural beauty in the entertainment industry, it's a sure-win investment. Are you still with him? We broke up. He broke it off. No, I did, I said sadly. I consulted a fortune teller. My name is Isla, and his is Liam. The master said he drains my luck. Ruby couldn't help but laugh. I'm serious, I continued. Before my dad finalizes any deal, he consults this master and it's always accurate. Really? She asked. Then ask your master about the name I've chosen for the hot pot restaurant. She dipped her finger in the drink and wrote on the table. I looked down. The 4 characters read, Wasteland Hot Pot, 3. I still invested in Ruby's hot pot restaurant, but her subsequent actions baffled me. A bunker, exactly. I want to open a bunker hot pot, she said nonchalantly. I pointed to the paper and worriedly said, but even if it's a bunker hot pot, this location is too far from the city center. How could it attract customers? We could choose a bunker in District X. That won't do. Too many people. She immediately refused. What I mean is, where there are more people, it becomes vulgar. Ruby said righteously, how can you and I mingle with the common folk? I'm confident I can turn this place into a well-known IP. Ruby chose a bunker built into a small mountain with 2 entrances, one next to a winding mountain road, quite spacious, and the other as an emergency exit, narrow enough for only one person to pass through, with the exit halfway up the hill. The bunker, built during wartime, was divided into 3 areas: electricity, storage, and living quarters. With the ventilation system and sewage system fully equipped, though many facilities were no longer operational due to years of neglect, that's not a problem, Ruby declared boldly. Let's get the door fixed first. Oh, how much do you need? She mentioned a number, and I stared at her, eyes wide with surprise. How much? That amount should be okay, she responded awkwardly. I was annoyed. That's enough to install several explosion-proof doors. That's actually my intention. What? We need not only explosion-proof doors but also fingerprint locks, she pointed at the blueprint, ensuring safety. No, we are opening a hot pot restaurant, not a bank, I said, confused. My protest was in vain. Ruby purchased 3 explosion-proof doors. One was installed at the escape passage, another divided the air raid shelter into 2 areas, and the last one was set up beside the mountain road. The door at the escape passage was surrounded by an electric fence, camouflaged with fake vines blending into the surrounding mountains, barely noticeable unless lifted closely. Why install an electric fence? We haven't even got electricity yet. Don't worry, the generator will be delivered tomorrow. Ruby patted my shoulder. A generator? Yes, she nodded seriously, a diesel generator. The next day, when I saw 10 8-kilowatt mobile diesel power stations neatly lined up outside the air raid shelter, I felt dizzy. Ruby, what on earth are you planning? Listen to me explain. Oh, there's your phone. She pointed at my pocket. I answered the call. It was from my mom. After a brief conversation, I hung up, incredulous. Carter wants to go on a blind date with me. Carter, Ruby leaned in eagerly. The one whose family owns billions. He traveled all the way to City C just for the date. That didn't make sense. Could it be that he had seen my beauty on social media and fallen in love? The more I thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. I couldn't disappoint Carter's expectations. I'm going back to the city to touch up my makeup, I told Ruby after hanging up. Good luck on your date, she smirked. I drove home. After some grooming and donning 10 centimeters heels, I glanced at a tablet on the sofa. It was Ruby's, left at my place by accident, recalling her unusual behavior. I impulsively checked her browsing history. How much rice does an adult eat in a day? How to grow vegetables without light? Can chicken coops be soundproof? Small-scale fish pond filtration systems? Barefoot doctor's manual? Breeding and care of sows? What? Has she lost her mind? Had her profession driven her insane? I'd long advised her against studying to be an electrician. Just as I was about to put the tablet down, a line at the bottom of the browsing history caught my eye. Zombie virus. I didn't go on the blind date. I returned to the air raid shelter instead. Teams were busy, one installing sound-absorbing and explosion-proof materials on the walls, another fitting filters to the ventilation system, and another connecting and testing the circuits of the mobile diesel power station. Some were digging a hole, which they said Ruby asked them to turn into a fish pond. This was too much. Ruby was nearby, enthusiastically swinging a hoe, in less than 15 minutes. She stopped, grimacing. My shoulder is killing me. You're holding your wrist. My wrist hurts too. We should just hire someone. She blinked. Darling, it looks like we're in for more expenses. I grabbed a stool and sat down, cutting her off mercilessly. Get on your knees. I need to interrogate you. Why should I kneel? In broad daylight, I felt a vein throb on my forehead and decided to be straightforward. When will the zombie outbreak occur? She froze, turned her head, and stared at me motionless. I stared back just as still. After a long moment, Ruby said, in 4 months. It took her a long time to tell this story. In the story, the zombie apocalypse erupted on March 4, 2530, and it quickly engulfed the world. There were 2 main reasons for the rapid downfall. First, the water sources were contaminated, reducing the human population by 2/3. Second, the zombies' hunting instincts awakened. They would gather and hunt in groups. A phenomenon we call the surge of the undead. She shuddered. It's the most terrifying disaster in the world. Do zombies evolve? Yes, after each surge, the zombies evolve. I was amazed. What do zombies become after evolving 3 times? You do ask some interesting questions. She glanced at me. I wasn't alive to see that. Sorry. She shook her head, lost in thought. Looking at her expression, she was recalling those bloody memories. I stayed with her for a while, then stood up. All right, let's get to work. Work on what? Preparing for war, stocking up, I answered. I first called my parents to update them. According to Ruby, after the zombie outbreak, humans would quickly react and build shelters. After weighing his options, my dad chose a shelter. He said, when the apocalypse comes, the old elite will crumble, but only at the center of power will there be a chance to rise again, elite or not. Is that really important? I earnestly advised. Dad, your thirst for power is pathological, and you thirst for beauty. Have I called you pathological? That's my dad, silencing my endless chatter in one sentence. Fine, at over 50, it's his time to strive. Let him be. I turned to Ruby. Darling, should we get some ducks? Ruby's eyes widened, looking at me in horror. I paused, then exploded. I mean proper ducks, the kind with flat beaks. My parents divided their bank account into 2, one part for me, and another to build a secret base for emergencies. I've never seen so much money in my life. My hands trembled with excitement. However, the first issue was a tough one. Generators need diesel. An 8 kilowatts portable diesel power station consumes 1.6 liters per hour. That's 38 liters a day. For a 5-year reserve, that's about 80 liters of diesel, nearly 60 tons. The power area has a room for storing several hundred tons of diesel, so storage wasn't a worry, but diesel can't be traded privately. Where could I get it? As I pondered, Ruby came to me saying she had already solved this issue. Her connections were as beautiful as they were wild, with electricity sorted. Next was water. According to Ruby, water sources would be contaminated during the apocalypse. Therefore, storing water was crucial. An adult consumes about 2 liters of water a day. For the 2 of us, over 5 years that's about 300 liters. Under the guise of regular purchases, we ordered 500 barrels of 5-liter purified water online. Additionally, I bought several domestic water storage tanks and a few industrial ones. We even brought in professionals to build 2 small water storage tanks to store water for daily use. I also purchased water purification and distillation equipment, along with an underground rainwater collection and purification system, just in case. Once the water storage was well underway, I began to plan for breeding and cultivation. Indeed, a full meal on one occasion is not as good as having meals regularly. I constructed a small eco-garden deep in the air raid shelter, complete with vegetable plots, a fish pond, and a chicken coop, all essentials included. The vegetable area is divided into a farming zone and a hydroponic zone, equipped with automatic irrigation and full-spectrum grow lights. The fish pond is fitted with an oxygenation system, a circulation filter, and an automatic thermostat. The chicken coop's interlayer is lined with soundproofing foam. I've also stocked up on agricultural tools, fishing gear, feed, fertilizer, nutrient soil, seeds, hydroponic vegetable seedlings, nutrient solutions, and several tillers, all of which can basically be sourced from online marketplaces. Next, we moved on to the living area. Ruby and I chose 2 adjacent chambers to serve as our living quarters. European king-size bed, check. Custom mattress, check. Velvet 4-piece set, check, check, check. Strangely, Ruby insisted on setting up 2 additional bedrooms not far from ours. Why arrange those? I was puzzled. Her eyes twinkled. In case we have guests. How could we possibly have guests? I was even more puzzled. Are you planning to make friends with zombies? She glared at me. What if your parents come? Right, that made sense. I wouldn't want my dad, a top-notch survivor, to come and find nowhere to stay, so we kept the rooms. I counted on my fingers. Since that's the case, I also need a walk-in closet, a bathroom, a gaming room. Let's add a study room while we're at it. Since we have plenty of rooms, no, plenty of chambers. Do you want to set up a KTV room? Let's skip that. It's too noisy, I said sheepishly, Ruby remarked. As for the bathroom, the shelter already has that covered, along with the sewage system. Did you think I chose this place randomly? Right, your foresight is commendable, I quickly added. Ruby refused to set up a gaming room. In her words, without the internet, how could we even think about gaming? I thought about it and indeed, she had a point. However, she bought mahjong sets, playing cards, various chess games, table games, and murder mystery games, determined to challenge me. Why get mahjong if it's just the 2 of us? I'm preserving human civilization, she said seriously. To preserve human civilization, we set up a study. Ruby was in charge of buying the books. She pointed to a bookshelf and told me to seriously read the following titles: Barefoot Doctor's Manual, Practical Farming Techniques, Farmer's Guide to Wealth with Science, Quick Learning Material for Steel Workers, Practical Knowledge on Small Machinery Design. Friend of dual-use talents for military and civil purposes, especially this one, it's a treasure. She pointed to friend of dual-use talents for military and civil purposes, saying, it covers everything from farming, building, fixing home appliances to landmines, firearms, rockets, even how to milk cows. Then it should be renamed Hand-Holding Guide to Starting Agriculture and Infrastructure from Scratch, I joked. That's a good title. I pointed to another book. I understand all this, but why is there 5-year college entrance exam, 3-year simulation? I thought it should preserve the essence of humanity. You're crazy, that's the dregs of humanity, I said. I installed a projector in the study, downloaded thousands of movies and TV shows, and bought Nintendo consoles, tablets, and Kindles. Now that's the essence of humanity. With this task completed, Ruby and I finally got to the main event, stocking up on food. With 2 months left until the zombie outbreak, it was about time. I pulled up a dietary nutrient intake reference chart and made a list. Long-lasting food items: carbohydrates, rice, flour, noodles, rice noodles, pasta, compressed biscuits, white sugar, rock sugar, proteins, protein powder, milk powder, soybeans, various dried meats, sausages, cured meats, vitamins, minerals, dehydrated vegetables, dried chilies, dried fruits, black fungus, kelp, seaweed, nuts, canned vegetables, canned fruits. Convenience foods: self-heating hot pots, self-heating rice, snail noodles, instant glass noodles, etc. Perishable foods: fresh vegetables, fruits, meat, eggs, milk, tofu, etc. Seasonings: oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, cooking wine, and various spices and hot pot bases. Taking action immediately. I started by purchasing 5 205-liter freezers and 2 301-liter refrigerators to store our food. We'll need to add a few more high-power generators and soundproof them, Ruby muttered. An adult consumes about 200 grams of meat per day, and unfortunately, the shelf life of frozen meat is only 1 year. If taste is not a concern, this can be extended to 2 years. That means we need over 580 kilograms of meat. Under the guise of stocking up, we amass various amounts of beef, lamb, pork, and chicken to meet our target. We also stocked up on river and sea delicacies, along with animal offal. The more dried meat, the better. Additionally, we purchased 1,000 kilograms each of rice, flour, and white sugar. White sugar is a controlled item, which took some effort to procure. Eventually, Ruby leveraged her connections to gather the required amount. The warehouse was treated for humidity and mold and equipped with rodent and insect repellents. The list of other essentials was also fully prepared, especially self-heating hot pots, self-heating rice, loasafen, hot and sour noodles, and plenty of instant noodles. We made several trips to the supermarket, clearing out the shelves of our favorite snacks and drinks. Next up were the daily necessities: toothpaste, hand soap, shampoo, shower gel, laundry soap, laundry detergent, dishwashing liquid, toilet paper, wet wipes, facial tissue, and sanitary pads. I also set up a bathroom with a bathtub, using a large industrial water storage barrel connected to the sewage system. Heating the water was a bit of a hassle. We had to heat it manually. Speaking of heating water, I realized we needed more fuel. We couldn't rely solely on the tons of diesel we had. I ordered 100 boxes of smokeless charcoal, 100 boxes of solid alcohol, and 100 boxes of candles from Taba and JD.com to serve as sources of heat, cooking, and lighting. We installed air conditioning in the bedroom and bought various heating devices like electric heaters, oil-filled radiators, heated carpets, and water-heated blankets, Ruby said. I bought 5 10 kilowatts generators and 2 30 kilowatts generators. Actually, I calculated it. An 8 kilowatts generator would be sufficient. Higher power means more fuel consumption, so avoid using high-power generators unnecessarily. I was skeptical. Are you sure that will be enough? I'm an electrician, she replied disdainfully. A month before the zombie outbreak, my mom visited. She brought a pair of homing pigeons, which had 3 nesting sites: the shelter, my parents' secret base, and here. My mom advised me to dig a small room next to the entrance with ventilation holes big enough to stick out a head for use as a shooting point. Shooting? You make it sound like I have a gun. You don't, my mom exclaimed, wide-eyed. Where would I get something like that? I was about to speak when Ruby returned. She drove up in a very conspicuous modified off-road vehicle, sticking half her head and an arm out the window, excitedly waving at me. Nice car, I genuinely complimented. Ruby dragged several large boxes out of the trunk. Dear, look what I got you. What could it be? I took the package she handed me, and its cold touch startled me. I mouthed the word, guns. She nodded proudly. All kinds of models. Seeing my stunned expression, she leaned in and whispered, and a few heavy machine guns. Oh, and explosives. Where on earth are your connections from? Buddha says it's indescribable. With my security now assured, my mom left feeling relieved. Following her advice, I built an observation post at the exit of the safety passage and made 2 ventilation holes. As for the exit by the roadside, blast it. Are you sure? Unsure, I said. Did it explode? Yes, I nodded vigorously. Boom, you didn't tell me earlier. I even installed a blast-resistant door. We both decided to move the door about 10 meters inward to leave some empty space. We could blow it up once the supplies arrived. Actually, there's no need to blow it up, just fill it with soil. At this point, the surveillance cameras were also fully installed, covering the entire bunker. Ruby, who was in charge of procurement, received the medical supplies, apart from the usual cold medicine, stomach medicine, anti-inflammatory drugs, painkillers, allergy medication, vitamin C tablets, antibiotics, and various supplements. There were also many unconventional drugs, as well as masks, alcohol, iodine, gauze, band-aids, syringes, indwelling needles, and other medical and health supplies. I was astonished. Do we need this much? You don't understand. After the collapse of order, medicines are important for trading, Ruby explained. There's still a market for trade. Yes, the biggest one was set up after the shelter was established, according to her. Tobacco and alcohol could also be used for trading, so I stocked up on a lot of these, as well as gold. Will we really need this stuff? She wondered. I was confident. Things that are inherently monetary will always become currency. In the last 2 weeks, we checked for any oversights and bought various miscellaneous supplies. By then, the door was also sealed, and plants were grown on the surface for camouflage. How will we get in? I pondered. Let's climb the mountain and enter through the back door, suggested Ruby. Luckily, I had turned off the electrical grid. We finally managed to climb through a gap in the electric fence to the back door, both of us breathing a sigh of relief. Time flew by, and the final moment arrived. On the day of the zombie outbreak, I couldn't find Ruby anywhere. Checking the surveillance, I found her squatting at the edge of the vegetable garden, digging in the soil. For some reason, I felt a bit anxious. What are you doing? I joined her in the garden. She didn't answer, but instead pointed at a lush green sprout in the ground and asked me, "What is this?" I chuckled awkwardly. "A grapevine. That's good." She nodded. "How long until we can eat them?" 2 years, she laughed. Wonder if we'll live that long. Seeing her troubled expression, I hurriedly reassured her. Of course we will. Look at all the supplies we have here. We can survive forever, and if one day we don't want to just survive, we can take some and go to the shelter. That would be reaching the pinnacle of life. While I rambled, she casually scrolled through Weibo. Suddenly, she exclaimed, "Oh, what happened? Did the zombie outbreak start?" No, she couldn't contain her amusement. Your ex changed his name and made the hot search. Stop joking, really. Look, she held up her phone to my eyes. I looked closely, and the top trending topic on Weibo was #Liam changed his name to Noah #. I was puzzled. Ruby shook her head. He really believed your nonsense. He's trying to get back together. With such a big event like the zombie outbreak, you didn't even think about him. That's heartless. Remembering the past, I felt a twinge of sympathy and thus pulled out my phone to send a message to Liam, or rather, Noah. Stay home, stock up on supplies, get plenty of drinking water and don't go outside. After sending the message, I put my phone back in my pocket. Can you really let go? Why don't we just tell him to come over? Ruby joked. No, I said firmly, you only live once, and as for men, there are plenty out there. She gave me a thumbs up. I sighed sentimentally. This darn charm of mine. Just so you know, I didn't go on that blind date with Carter, but he kept contacting me several times. It's really unfortunate. Ruby looked a bit strange. She muttered to herself, well, it's about time. Time? What time? I suddenly tensed up. Are the zombies coming? No. It's dinner time. I'm hungry. Speaking of which, when exactly are the zombies supposed to show up? I can't remember clearly, maybe around 2 or 3 in the morning, she replied. Late at night, I couldn't sleep. Every so often, I would check Weibo, but there was still no news about zombies. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the ventilation duct, like something had exploded far away. Startled, I grabbed my binoculars and ran to the lookout station. Nearly bumping into Ruby, who had also heard the noise, I brought the binoculars up to the observation hole. Not here, not here, not here either. This is it. This is the highway entrance of City C. A car had flipped over and was burning fiercely. An injured person lay beside it, his condition unknown. A group of people stood around him, one of them performing CPR. Ruby exclaimed with a tremor in her voice. What's wrong? Look at his leg. Only then did I notice. The injured man's leg was twisted in a very strange angle. Suddenly, his body jerked and he convulsed. Not good, I blurted out. In the next second, the man leaped up and bit a woman's throat. His face, smeared with blood, clung to her as he furiously tore at her. It was clear he was no longer human. Everyone present was stunned by the sudden change. Screaming and running in all directions, 2 zombies staggered to their feet. They wandered around for a while and quickly disappeared into the night. I put down the binoculars, my palms wet with sweat. Ruby was speechless for a good while. Is he patient zero? I asked. Ruby said, who knows, but his threat isn't greater than that of the water source. The zombie virus only has 2 transmission routes, through zombie bites and water. Thankfully, it's not airborne. After witnessing such a bloody scene, I lost all desire to sleep. I ran to the control room and thoroughly inspected all areas of the fallout shelter. Then browsed the internet for several hours. The internet was in an uproar. Zombies, humanity is doomed. Don't touch the water, it's contaminated. That was the last call from my mom. I don't have a mom anymore. Water, why bother? I might as well go downstairs and let a zombie bite me to death. That's right, if you can't beat them, join them. Humanity is really finished. Humanity has committed many sins. And sooner or later there will be retribution. Are you okay? No? Am I poisoned by mushrooms? There's a group of people howling like wolves under my building. Congratulations, buddy. Those are zombies. Zombies. Is this a side effect of eating mushrooms? I continued scrolling and came across a message. Now it's March 5th, 2530. I've been bitten, and it's regrettable to say goodbye to the world this way. Farewell, world. I've never found you so beautiful. My nose tingled, and tears welled up in my eyes. Am I being too selfish? Should I save a few people? No, I shook my head. Only human hearts are evil. I can't take that gamble. In this apocalypse, all I can protect are the most important people. Having realized this, I went straight to sleep and, surprisingly, had a dreamless night. The next day, I was awakened by faint, dismal screams coming from the ventilation ducts. The sounds were strange, like those of a wild beast, yet also human. I went to the lookout station, and Ruby was already there. I lifted the binoculars and couldn't help but gasp. What a hell on earth. Focusing on any corner of City C, I could see wrecked vehicles, scattered supplies, spattered blood, and oddly positioned people. They were certainly not human. Overrun. In just one day, I said miserably. Ruby didn't respond, just patted my shoulder comfortingly. That's how we started our life coexisting with zombies. It was then I realized how correct Ruby's initial decision was. The bunker was far from the city center, avoiding most dangers. We didn't have to worry about the lighting or noise inside alerting zombies or malevolent people. Of course, aside from the occasional car speeding down the highway, I hadn't seen many people. I was utterly in awe of Ruby that day. After Ruby had maintained the generator, she saw me walking out from the depths of the bunker with a gun in hand. She flinched. What are you doing? Practicing shooting. I had taken a few rubber training guns to practice with. She pointed at the vegetable garden. What are these? Oh, crown daisy, cilantro, leeks, spinach, pea shoots. I'm not sure if the supplementary lights are effective, but I planted some shade-tolerant vegetables on the other side of the garden. There were also chili peppers, tomatoes, and potatoes that had been planted but hadn't grown yet. She stared blankly for a while. I'm hungry, let me know what you want to eat, and I'll make it. I want some noodle soup, Ruby said. The request of a lifesaver must be fulfilled. I flipped through the complete cookbook of delicious recipes and finally found the recipe for the noodle soup. Minced pickled vegetables, minced ginger, minced garlic, chopped green onions. 2 spoons of chili oil, a little soy sauce, a pinch of Sichuan pepper powder, a little salt, MSG, a few sesame seeds, and lard. All these ingredients go into a bowl, then boil water in a pot, add noodles and greens, pour the hot soup into the bowl to mix, then add the cooked noodles and greens, and top with a fried egg. It was so easy. Following the instructions, I managed to make 2 delicious bowls of noodle soup. We took the noodles into the audio-visual room, watched Empresses in the Palace, and enjoyed a hearty meal. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I ate. To enjoy such delicacies in a hell on earth, wasn't this a generous gift from fate? Before I knew it, a week had passed. Some areas of City C had already lost power, though some public lighting was still on. At night, City C looked like a colorful patchwork on a black canvas. Could this be the legendary colorful darkness? The air was also filled with a rotting smell. The appearance and mobility of the zombies hadn't changed much. The decay wasn't rapid. Since moving into the bunker, the thing I've done most is use the binoculars to look for traces of survivors. One day, I spotted a young couple venturing out and were quickly noticed by the zombies roaming their neighborhood. The zombies lunged towards them. The two seemed prepared and quickly split up. The woman ran towards the parking lot, while the man used a stainless steel basin to make a loud disturbance, drawing the zombies towards him. I thought it was a life-for-life situation and my heart was in my throat, but then I saw the man throw the basin far away. The noise of it hitting the ground attracted the zombies, and they all turned to chase after it. A few zombies at the front realized something was wrong and continued pursuing the man. Just as they were about to catch up, the man pulled out another stainless steel basin from his coat. Watching this, I laughed heartily, clearing away the gloom of the past few days. In this manner, the man threw several basins and successfully reached the parking lot. Once he got into the car, the woman at the driver's seat stepped on the accelerator, and the car sped away. The efforts made by our kind for survival are truly awe-inspiring. I took out a notebook and a pen and recorded, March 12, 2530, observed survivors, 1 male and 1 female. The man used a stainless steel basin to create noise and cover the woman's escape, and he also successfully escaped. Zombie evolution. None. Form, human-like. Intelligence, none. Characteristics, extremely fast and sensitive to sound. What are you doing? Ruby suddenly slapped me on the shoulder. I jumped. She took the notebook in her hands, clicking her tongue in admiration. Wow, I didn't expect you to be so observant. It's really that. Meticulous. No, slipping through the cracks. Slipping through the cracks isn't really a compliment, I replied helplessly. She picked up the binoculars, stuck her head out in a pretentious manner, and scanned around. Let's see if anyone has escaped from the zombies. What's wrong? She didn't speak, fiddled with the binoculars again, and her expression gradually became serious. Speak up, what's going on? Ruby pulled her head back in, stammering. There's a car. What about a car? Be more specific. 2 people, about 600 meters from us, at the road bend. Ruby finally spoke coherently. They got out of the car. Seems like they're looking for something. Seems like they're coming towards us. It's rare to see vehicles fleeing midway and stopping. Hearing this, I also felt suspicious and raised the binoculars myself. Indeed, a man and a woman were lingering at the road bend. The man was pointing at the cliff wall, seemingly explaining something. The more I watched, the heavier my heart sank. They were looking for the entrance to a bomb shelter. I turned and ran towards the cave, but Ruby grabbed me. What are you doing? Her face was pale. I'm going to get a gun, I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. A gun. Ruby looked even more frightened, but after hesitating, she let go of me. I quickly retrieved a handgun. By then, the man and woman had moved their car about 300 meters forward and started a new round of searching. It seemed they were not familiar with the structure of the bomb shelter. I adjusted the aim of the gun while quickly thinking, why had these people come here? Were they instigated by someone, or did they already know about this place? I tried to recall their faces. Alas, I have face blindness. I couldn't remember it all. Do I really have to kill them? I had thought about it. In an apocalypse, it's hard to ensure that my hands remain clean, but this day came too quickly. My hand holding the gun trembled slightly. They're coming, Ruby whispered. Indeed, the sedan slowly approached. The vehicle came to a stop. Impartially positioned just below the lookout station, I quickly pulled Ruby aside to hide. Vines concealed the door and the air vents. I could only hope they wouldn't look too closely and would leave on their own. Unfortunately, reality was disappointing. After searching for a while, the two quickly discovered the door and let out excited shrieks. In a flash, a zombie suddenly emerged from the cliffside by the road. It lunged at the man who was closer. He hesitated for only a second before grabbing the woman by the arm and throwing her towards the zombie with ruthless decisiveness. The woman was stunned, tumbling down the cliff with the zombie before she could even scream. Ruby wanted to scream but dared not, covering her mouth tightly with her hands instead. Cold sweat dripped down my forehead. This was the apocalypse. In the apocalypse, there is no room for compassion. The man retrieved a chainsaw from the trunk and headed towards the air raid shelter. 20 meters, 10 meters, 5 meters. It was time. I fired a shot. The bullet struck the ground in front of him, kicking up a cloud of dust. The man staggered but managed to keep his balance. He looked up and saw Ruby and me behind the air vent. I waved the gun in my hand at him. Buddy, go back where you came from. Don't make me send you off. He stood there, frozen. A mix of despair, pain, and fear flashing across his face. Finally, he bent his knees and knelt on the ground. I frowned. Please, let me in, he pleaded urgently. You ladies are kind-hearted. Just a bit of your supplies to feed me would be enough. Ruby tugged at me and whispered, just give him some food and send him on his way. I shook my head. I'm not planning to let him go. You mean? Her face turned pale, ignoring her. I continued to question the man. You can come in. But first you must tell me, how did you know about this place? I helped move things for you. So he was one of the movers. Did you come here alone? His eyes darted around, involuntarily glancing down the cliff, then answered, yes, just me. I scoffed inwardly, then asked, did you tell anyone else about the supplies here? No, absolutely not. I swear to God. I sighed. I'm done asking questions. He suddenly realized. You're not going to let me in, nor will you let me leave, right? Reacting quickly, I raised my gun as he also quickly made a dash for the sedan, cursing as he ran. Bitch, I'll bring more people here. I'll tell them there are supplies. A bullet struck his leg. He fell to the ground, crying out, don't kill me. I don't want to die. Please. My hand trembled violently as I aimed the gun at his head. I'm sorry, I said softly. The bullet whistled out, striking his temple. The man fell, blood seeping into the soil beneath him. I remained in my shooting stance. My mind blank. Ruby's voice seemed to come from far away, gentle yet with an imperceptible tremble. It's over. Put it down. Put the gun down. That night, I came down with a high fever. I had a dream. I dreamed of the man, wielding a chainsaw, grinning menacingly as he approached me. I tried to shoot, but I couldn't pull the trigger. He kept advancing towards me. I saw a dark bullet hole in his temple. I woke up gasping for breath. Ruby sat by my bed, holding a bowl of steaming soup, awake. Drink the ginger soup, she said. Touched, I propped myself up, still groggy, and took a sip. How much ginger did you put in? I asked warily. She pondered seriously. Not much, just 8 or 9 pieces. If you have something against me, you can just say it. No need to resort to poison. I paused, attempting a joke that wasn't very funny. Or are you trying to kill me to avenge that guy today? After saying that, we both fell silent for a moment. It's okay, she seemed to be comforting me. Or maybe herself. At first, I blamed you for being harsh. Couldn't we have just let him go? Was it necessary to take his life? But then, I realized quickly, we couldn't let him go. There are those who steal for 1,000 years, but no one can guard against theft for 1,000 years. He had already harbored ill intentions. Letting him go would be like releasing a tiger back to the mountain. Now he's alone, and we can handle him. But what if he gathered a group? What if those people were armed? What if they had explosives? She reached out and took my hand. We killed him together. You're not alone, Ruby said. Her words deeply moved me, leaving me speechless. All right, no need for sentimental words. She waved her hand, cutting off my emotional momentum. Want some more soup? I can make it for you. No need. Don't be formal with me. We're close, really, no need. Just get me a box of ibuprofen. After taking the ibuprofen, I drifted off into a heavy sleep again. The next morning, I was awakened by a massive explosion. When I dragged my cotton-soft legs to the lookout post, Ruby had already crawled in through the door. Man, that killed me. What did you do? I asked. She blinked. Disposed of the body. I suddenly realized. You pushed that guy off the cliff, and his car. You managed to push a car. She shrugged. You forgot. We also bought a jack. Well done. I said sincerely, but it's too dangerous. Next time call me, I'll cover you. I should practice shooting too, she mused thoughtfully. Life with Ruby returned to normal. 2 months passed. While we lived our precarious lives, the outside world also underwent significant changes. The power supply in City C was completely cut off, and survivors lost their means to communicate online. We could just wait for the zombies to decay on their own, I said. I'm afraid we can't wait. Ruby stared into the distance, murmuring to herself. What do you mean? I asked. She pointed. Look at tonight's moon. Confused, I looked up. Under the pitch-black sky, the moon was nearly full, its edges haloed, casting a vague glow. This is, I frowned, a haloed moon, Ruby said. Before I was reborn, the first zombie wave occurred on a night with a fuzzy moon. As if in response to her words, the night-shrouded city of C suddenly erupted with a bizarre noise. Initially, it was a spooky woo-woo sound. which later turned into a desolate and intermittent howling. Before pulling Ruby away from the lookout station, I glanced at the situation in the city center. Countless zombies emerged from every corner of City C, gradually forming a terrifying torrent of screeches and ghostly wails. 7. Unable to sleep, Ruby and I went to the surveillance room to check the situation. The zombies were concentrated in the downtown area. The mountain roads showed no unusual activity. They can't open doors or climb stairs, so how do they hunt, and how do they know which houses have survivors? I asked. Smell, Ruby said. Normally, zombies don't have a sense of smell, but on the night of a zombie wave, they can smell the scent of survivors. Indeed, they can't climb stairs, but they can form human pyramids. Human pyramids, this means that the zombies first pinpoint the location of the survivors and then, leveraging their large numbers, stack up like a mountain and finally break through the windows. I imagined the scene, and a chill ran down my spine. Wait a second, a crucial question suddenly struck me. They won't smell us, will they? Well, she drawled, I'm not sure. Why are you looking at me? Do you think I used to live in a bomb shelter? She glared at me. Thankfully, the zombies showed no intention of heading in our direction. I lay on the bed, writing in my zombie observation journal by the light of the bedside lamp. April 1st, 2530. Observed the first zombie wave. A fuzzy moon halo might be a necessary trigger for a zombie wave. Characteristics: zombies focus on hunting. Zombie evolution: unevolved, said to evolve after the zombie wave. Form: human-like. Intelligence: hunting behavior closer to biological instinct. Features: astonishingly fast movement, highly sensitive to sound and smell. The screams of the zombies continued throughout the night until dawn brought calm. This marked the 56th day of the zombie outbreak. Ruby and I sat next to a fragrant spicy hot pot, nervously watching the images transmitted from the surveillance room. There appeared a living person. No, two living people. They were riding in a modified off-road vehicle, speeding in our direction, with 3 zombies relentlessly chasing them, an arm extended from the passenger side window, holding a gun. After a burst of gunfire, 1 zombie fell. Ah, I exclaimed. Ruby gave a wry smile. You noticed too? Yes, I noticed. Impenetrable. The first evolution of zombies showed no change in form, but clearly, they were not made of flesh and blood. Bullets couldn't penetrate their bodies. Only a headshot could incapacitate a zombie. The situation had become even more complicated. I said. The car is getting closer. It's not coming for us, is it? Ruby hesitated. What's wrong? I might need to go pick someone up. She stood up. I'll explain when I get back, she stuttered. Before I could respond, the off-road vehicle suddenly braked sharply, and a person got out from the driver's seat. Even though the surveillance couldn't clearly show faces, one could sense he was handsome. He raised his gun. Bang bang. 2 zombies fell to the ground in response. Nice shooting, I couldn't help but praise. His arm slowly lowered, and he looked towards the direction of the surveillance camera. Her piercing gaze seemed to penetrate surveillance itself. I shuddered. Suddenly, a crackling sound of electricity emanated from Ruby's waist. She reached down and pulled out a walkie-talkie. A harsh male voice came through. Apple, banana, big pear, me, that. Ruby glanced at me, responding reluctantly. Watermelon, grape, honeydew, me. It's him. Ruby avoided my gaze. I'm going to pick him up. I'm coming with you. I gritted out the words. You better explain what's going on, Ruby said. Actually, it's quite simple. He's our financier. Financier, yeah. Don't you know him? Ruby continued. That's Carter. I followed Ruby, bewildered, into the lookout station. Carter, seeing us appear behind the ventilator, gave Ruby a faint smile. It was a smile, yet utterly devoid of joy. Then he turned his gaze to me. His face was streaked with blood and dirt, which paradoxically highlighted his rugged handsomeness. He extended the Beretta M9A4 gun in his hand towards me. A gift for our meeting, he said. I was stunned. As you can see, that's how things are, Ruby said nervously beside me. All those tricky things, diesel guns, pure sugar, well, he handled most of that. No good deed goes unpunished, I remarked. Could it be that he and you, where is your mind going? He has only one requirement for us, to use this place as a fallback point when necessary. Oh, I suddenly understood. So, was his wanting to meet me also for this reason? I wouldn't know about that. Maybe he was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Ruby winked. I glanced at Carter again. He was also looking at me. His straightforward, unmasked gaze gave me the eerie sensation of being undressed. Just then, the passenger door opened, and a young man with unkempt hair stepped out, hunched over, with dark circles so heavy they could hang from his cheekbones. It's worth mentioning, he had a handsome face, like a mad scientist. Is this a buy one get one free deal? I frowned. You agreed to let him in, but I didn't. My words stopped abruptly. Carter opened the trunk. Inside lay a row of guns and several large boxes of ammunition. All yours, he said. Half an hour later, the 4 of us sat around a table eating hot pot. The atmosphere was eerily silent. Brandon, the disheveled man, kept his head down as he ate, a lock of hair swaying distractingly. I couldn't help but stare. Eat up, Carter suddenly spoke, his words directed at Brendan, but his eyes on me. We still have to deal with zombies later. Ruby showed her knack for conversation. Are you guys planning to throw the zombies off the cliff? Throw them, Brendan finally spoke, his first words since I'd met him. Isn't that a waste? What do you mean? It seems you don't know yet, Carter said. 3 pieces. That should be enough. What do you mean? What 3 pieces? Brendan explained. Let me put it this way. The existence of zombies actually defies science, breaking a very important law, the law of conservation of energy. I blurted out. Exactly. Brendan gave me an appreciative look. Now that the law of energy conservation no longer exists, there must be opposing forces that emerge in the world, such as people with special abilities. Ah, you mean like superpowers? Ruby asked. Yes. The weak spot of zombies is their brain. They produce a crystal core there, which can be used to refine these special abilities. Brendan replied. Why are you making that face? Carter suddenly asked me. Without thinking, I shot back sarcastically. Why are you so fond of observing my expressions? Carter opened his mouth but said nothing, his face showing what could be described as a deflated expression for the first time. Brendan and Ruby were snickering. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to single you out, it's just, I thought my new life would involve lying low and stockpiling supplies during the apocalypse. Then you suddenly bring up superpowers, and I'm a bit baffled, I said. Fate is always unpredictable, don't you think? Carter remarked. After finishing the hot pot, Carter and Brendan went out to deal with zombies while Ruby and I stayed at the lookout station, guns at the ready, to cover them. Maybe I should do it, I said, worriedly glancing at Ruby's trembling hands. I'm afraid you might accidentally shoot them. They're wearing bulletproof vests, aren't they? Ruby replied. Right, that made sense. We stopped talking and focused on watching them work. Soon, Carter and Brendan had extracted 3 pale yellow crystal cores from the heads of 3 zombies, shimmering like translucent yellow quartz. They tossed the zombie bodies off the cliff. Wait for us, Carter shouted to me and Ruby. We'll park the car in the garage and come back. Garage, yes, that's the thing, Ruby said. I dug another hole about 200 meters from us, installed a blast door, and that's where our car is. I was wondering why we were missing a door when I did the accounts, I said, astonished. Ruby, oh Ruby, you really had me fooled. It was a well-intentioned lie, she stammered. Carter and Brendan quickly returned and handed us 2 pale yellow crystal cores. Hold it tight and clear your mind, Brendan instructed Ruby. Ruby did as she was told, and with an she opened her hand. The crystal core vanished, replaced by a handful of bright red flames dancing and crackling in her palm. Fire attribute, Brendan noted. Quite rare. What does that mean? What can this attribute do? Ruby asked. It can be used for attack. If a zombie attacks you, you can burn it, Brendan answered. Oh, I said, pretending to be serious. So I can call you Fire Girl from now on. Ruby glared at me. I could burn you. Try yours, Carter said to me. I clenched the crystal core, and after it disappeared, I opened my palm. A sprig with leaves sprouted from my palm, quickly budding and blooming into delicate flowers, which withered in an instant, giving way to heavy fruits that swayed briefly on the branch before falling to the ground and vanishing. What attribute? Brendan said. Moved. He stepped forward and grabbed my hand. Carter reacted faster, grabbing his collar and tossing him aside. Speak up, don't get physical, Carter said. No, it's the wood element, the wood element. Brendan was so excited he was nearly incoherent. Do you know what this means? I do. Carter smiled at me. Congratulations. Congratulations for what? I don't even know what this element is for, I said. Do you two have a vegetable garden here? Carter asked. Yes, we do. Show me. Carter squatted by the garden and examined a frail seedling for a while. What's this? Chili peppers. I love them, I replied. Put your hand over it and try. I placed my hand over the chili seedling, feeling a warm flow streaming out from the palm of my hand. The chili seedling grew rapidly, soon blooming and bearing fruit. The vibrant red color made my mouth water. I missed the taste of fresh chili peppers so much. So, my ability is plant growth, Carter said. You can make everything flourish. I'm pretty amazing, I sincerely said. The other 3 nodded in agreement. Right. Suddenly, I thought of a very important question. What are your abilities? Brendan is earth, and I'm water, Carter explained. He has a portable space. And I have healing powers. Can you turn a zombie back into a human? I asked. No, but if they were just bitten and haven't fully turned, then I can, Carter replied. I nodded. Oh, suddenly, Carter stared at my face and slowly leaned in. What are you doing? I asked warily. Don't move, he said, as he placed his warm hand on my forehead. After a warm flow, the small cut on my forehead healed as if nothing had happened. Brendan and Ruby sensed the unusual atmosphere and started walking deeper into the air raid shelter while chatting. The weather is nice today, yes. I think pasta should be mixed with Type 42 concrete, don't you think? That's right. With such high-speed machinery entering the shelter, I couldn't stand it anymore. You two, come back here. Let's leave them some time. Time is precious. Brendan turned back and smiled at me. He and I are leaving tomorrow. Leaving? Where to? The ghost market, Brendan replied. A trade market set up by the shelter. Meetings come suddenly, and departures are equally abrupt. The next morning, Carter and Brendan were indeed ready to leave. Stay safe, have a smooth journey, I said. Carter looked at me, his gaze unwavering. Isla, we know each other. Of course, we know each other. Didn't we just have hot pot yesterday? I was puzzled. Not yesterday. Then was it? A few months ago at the blind date, I said. But we didn't meet then. Not that time either. I was confused. Then when did we meet? Take your time. It's okay if you can't remember, Carter said slowly. Anyway, what? Anyway, he said meaningfully, we'll meet again. Carter and Brendan left. I absent-mindedly picked up some scrambled eggs with tomatoes with my chopsticks, almost missing my mouth. Aren't you going to eat? When will you eat if not now? Ruby said with exasperated affection. How long has it been since we last had fresh tomatoes? No, tell me, when have I ever met him? Why can't I remember anything at all? That's odd. Ruby remarked. You're all about looks. And he's so handsome, how can you have no memory of him? You only know part of the story. Yes, I am focused on looks, but I don't like his type. What I really like is, well, it's definitely Liam, no, more like Noah, who has a beauty that blends masculine and feminine traits. Carter is too conventionally handsome, he's not to my taste, masculine and feminine traits, so, effeminate. Please, you don't get it, I retorted. True beauties should be androgynous. Men should have a blend of masculine and feminine qualities, and women should be spirited and bold. That's what makes a top-tier beauty, right? I can't compete with you there. You've seen so many beauties, speaking from experience. Wait, are you complimenting me or mocking me? Life with Ruby had returned to its peaceful routine. Late at night, I wrote in my zombie observation journal by the light of my bedside lamp, April 30, 2530, the first wave of zombies has ended. Marking an evolution in the zombies, evolution status, evolved once, form, human-like, intelligence, none, characteristics, remarkably fast movement, loss of sound and smell detection, invulnerability to blades and firearms. Special note, zombie brains can develop a crystal core, granting the holder supernatural abilities. Extra cores can be used to refine these powers. Fire attribute for attack, earth attribute for personal space, water attribute for healing. And the exceedingly rare wood attribute can promote growth in all things. After finishing my notes, I pondered for a moment and concluded the journal entry with a short poem by Suji Ma. Chance encounter. I am a cloud in the sky, occasionally casting a shadow on your heart. You need not be surprised, nor must you rejoice, at the trace of me that vanishes in a moment. You and I meet on the dark sea at night. You have your direction, and I have mine. Remembering is fine, but best you forget. The light emitted when we met. Carefully, I placed the journal back into the drawer and whispered softly, we may see each other again, or perhaps we won't. Story 2. On the 15th day of the scorching heat, with temperatures outside reaching 48 degrees Celsius, people were gripped by the fear of an impending apocalypse, desperately stockpiling supplies. Water and electricity were now being supplied only during specific times, and the news urged everyone to hoard goods and stay indoors, outside. The grass and trees had turned yellow and wilted under the relentless sun, and the streets were deserted. However, today my house was bustling with activity, as I had notified the entire village that they could buy anything from my family's store at the original price. Early in the morning, villagers from nearby had gathered around, jostling and shoving at the storefront in an effort to get to the front. Some cursed loudly and even came to blows. I kept the door firmly shut, hearing the anxious knocking and swearing from outside. Didn't she say we could buy things? Why isn't she opening the door? With supplies so precious now, maybe she's having second thoughts. I knew it was too good to be true that someone would sell their survival goods. Let's just break down the door and take what we need. Hurry up and open the door, girl, it's too hot, and it won't be good if we all overheat out here. Thankfully, I had installed a sturdy door beforehand to prevent theft, which kept them at bay as long as they didn't bring tools to smash it down, so I felt safe enough to eat a few small buns for breakfast inside. Just when the crowd outside was about to break down the door, the village had arrived. I then went to open the door. Everyone looked greedily at the array of goods on the shelves, but the law still held enough sway to prevent them from outright theft in my presence. Eventually, organized by the village committee, everyone left satisfied with their purchases. By the time the sun was high in the sky, everything in my store had been sold, even some old shoe brushes that had been sitting around for years. In this uncontrollable heat, money had become the least useful thing. Tangible goods were the only real security. As I was happily counting the money, a van pulled up at my doorstep. My parents and younger brother climbed out, dusty and weary. They were stunned by the empty shelves in the store. The village head, full of praise, complimented my father. "Your daughter really knows the bigger picture. She voluntarily offered her supplies to help the village through this hardship. She's a good kid." After the village head left with the last bag of rice and a bucket of water, my parents were completely dumbfounded. My father, in disbelief, asked, "What happened here? Where are all our things?" "I sold them," I replied cheerfully. "Many people in the village hadn't stored any supplies, and I was worried about everyone, so I sold all the stuff from the store." My father turned pale with anger, and my mother, in a flash of fury, rushed up and slapped me hard across the face. Pointing at my nose, she scolded, "Have you lost your mind? What are we supposed to eat and drink now?" I touched my face, a cold smirk in my heart. What? So it was okay for them to play the saint in their time, but not for me. The range of the red high temperature warnings in the news is expanding. Some vigilant people have started stockpiling supplies at home. Doomsday declarations are also swirling wildly online. Because I run a small store in my hometown village, I am never short of supplies. However, my store has also attracted unwanted attention. My parents, who live far away in the provincial capital, called to inform me. They said they would return to the countryside in a few days as the city was too hot. They also instructed me to hide our household supplies well and not to give them to anyone else. I obediently locked the gate and stayed indoors all day. During the day, familiar voices of uncles and aunts pleaded at the door, asking me to sell them some food and water. Thinking of my parents' advice, I painfully refused. At night, I could hear rustling sounds at my front door. I don't know if it was because my new door was very sturdy, or if the people outside hadn't reached their breaking point. After a while of unsuccessful tampering, they left. I hid in the corner of my bed, hugging myself, constantly praying for my parents to come back soon. On the 15th day of the heat wave, my parents finally returned with my younger brother. I just breathed a sigh of relief. In front of the village secretary and the villagers who came to our door, they fiercely scolded me. They said I grew up in the village but knew nothing about giving back, hiding supplies and not sharing them with everyone. They accused me of intentionally wanting to hurt people. After that, they sold some of the pre-prepared supplies to the villagers. My parents received gratitude from the village, while I was branded as ungrateful. Later, as the high temperatures persisted longer, our supplies dwindled. My parents kicked me out to find food and water. As soon as I stepped outside, I was beaten to death by Brant, who harbored resentment. "Damn bitch. Back then I begged you to sell me something and you stubbornly refused. Now I'll make sure you're dead." Lying on the ground, barely alive, I saw my mother's figure from afar. I raised my hand towards her with all my might. She paused for a moment, then quickly turned and walked away. The final blow hit my head, and everything went dark, unexpectedly. After I died, my body felt light, floating around the village. I watched as the villagers became increasingly vicious, doing whatever it took for a bit of water and food, smashing, looting, and even killing. Just when I thought humanity might be doomed, rain finally fell from heaven. 6 months after the high temperatures began, the nation successfully resolved the crisis. Artificial rain cooled the earth slowly. Everyone survived, and life could return to normal. After resolving the heat crisis, the government began a thorough investigation of those who committed crimes during this period. Those who had recklessly killed, thinking it was the end of the world, were imprisoned. Brant could not escape the punishment of the law. My dear parents and younger brother, thanks to the well-stocked store, lived quite comfortably. They even signed a letter of forgiveness for me at the tearful request of Brant's family. I was furious. And when I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. I think, perhaps heaven intended for me to seek revenge personally. In this new life, I returned to a few days before the start of the extreme heat, and I discovered I had a special ability that would allow me to safely survive the terrifying heat. I had a small space, although not large, about 20 cubic meters. But it was enough for me to stockpile supplies and endure those 6 months. I quickly ordered a large batch of grains, oils, bread, fast food, and bottled water under the guise of restocking, urging the distributor to deliver them promptly. During the downtime, I drove to the county town. At the supermarket, I picked up some items I hadn't tried before, like instant noodles, self-heating hot pots, and various flavors of ice cream. Since time stands still in my space, nothing I put in their changes. I quickly bought a lot of cakes, milk tea, fruits, and even got several ready-made dishes packed from restaurants. I also bought a few large rice cookers and freezers. The rice is cooked directly, and whenever I want to eat, I just serve it in a bowl along with the dishes, and it's as if it's freshly made. I quickly filled the large freezer with ice blocks to use for cooling later, once I had enough food prepared. I turned around and went to the pharmacy to stock up on some medicines: cold medicine, anti-inflammatory antibiotics, ibuprofen, and herbal tonic. After thinking it over, I also bought some books at the bookstore. Even though the internet service was fine despite the heat, I wanted to be prepared for any potential disruptions later. Having these books would also help pass the time. By the time I had everything ready, my little space was packed full. I returned to my small village, just waiting for the high temperatures to hit. As the temperature continued to rise, my father called me just like he did in the previous generation, saying they would be back soon. I listened as they instructed me to guard the supplies, nodding in agreement here. I immediately informed the village secretary there. I said I was willing to sell things to everyone to help us all get through this tough time together. The village secretary was overjoyed and quickly arranged for someone to notify the villagers to come to my store in 3 days to buy supplies. He would use these few days to organize the store and see how to distribute things most fairly. The village secretary praised me profusely, saying I was the most grateful person and that he would report my good deeds. I just smiled, not really caring. In this life, I'm focused on settling scores and revenging wrongs. So now that I've sold the supplies and seen the stern faces of my parents, I'm quite pleased inside. Listening to my mother's curses and accusations, I covered my face, pretending to be puzzled. Although we've sold the household items, you must have stocked up on supplies when you returned from the provincial city, right? My mother was so angry she nearly slapped me again. That's for your brother, you don't get a share. My brother seriously added, yeah, that was bought with my money. According to our family rules, if you didn't contribute financially, you're not entitled to a share. My parents nodded in agreement as usual. I argued back, you haven't earned money either, it's still mom and dad's money, so I should have a share. My mother exploded, you've already moved out, our money has nothing to do with you, your brother is still studying, whatever we earn is his. My father agreed wholeheartedly, exactly, that's the rule I've taught you since you were young. The so-called rule in my family is supposed to be gender equality. My hometown is a remote rural area, where the mentality of favoring males over females is severe, but my parents were educated and considered themselves enlightened, despising the local gender bias. When I was born, a girl, I wasn't what they hoped for, despite the advice from friends and relatives. My parents didn't give me a name that reflected waiting for a male child, which they thought would be ridiculous, so they named me Sue. Believing it suited me well, when my brother was born, they felt even stronger about gender equality. If I won an award, the prize had to be shared with my brother. If my brother did something wrong, I had to be punished along with him. They called it fairness and justice, which they believed would foster a good relationship between us siblings. Just after I graduated, we received news that our grandmother back home was unwell. My parents thought, since they believed in gender equality, so it was only right that I returned to my hometown to fulfill my filial duties. I ended up staying there for 3 years. To make a living, I rented a place and opened a small store. After I started earning money, my parents insisted on gender equality and said I should also financially support them every month. They wanted me to send money home every month. However, my younger brother was still studying and was exempt from this. My parents also mentioned that when my brother gets married in the future, I would have to contribute financially. Gender equality means you and your brother should each pay half the expenses for marrying a bride. Of course, my parents maintained this superficial equality. Over the years, after I handed over my earnings, they didn't inquire about my remaining money, but at the same time, they didn't allow me to have any say in the money they spent on my brother. In my past life, I was brainwashed by these arguments and obediently followed them. Living this life again, I finally saw through their true intentions. Seeing my brother dressed in branded clothes from a young age and well-nourished, I realized how much my parents' idea of gender equality was skewed. Such gender equality was nothing but a tool to exploit women under the guise of fairness. I started to protest when I saw they didn't want to involve me. I don't care, I'm also your daughter. Now that everything in the store is sold, you have to take care of me too. My brother immediately disapproved, having brought very little with him when he left the provincial city. Considering there was still plenty of food in my store, there was no need to buy more. Little did they know, I had impulsively sold everything, leading to our current predicament, with the food they brought in the car barely enough for the 3 of them. How could they afford to share with me? My brother firmly stated. No, I can't share with you, it's only fair. My father agreed. That's right, we can't break the family rules. This is the family tradition I've established, and it must be passed down. Thinking it over, likely worried I'd end up staying at home and needing food, my father suggested, our old house is at the back of the village, you can move there, we'll stay here temporarily with your mother and brother. He also emphasized, this is for your own good. Gender equality means it wouldn't be fair for you to live with us and depend on others. Pretending to be upset, I agreed. fine, but don't regret this. After that, I left in a huff. The old house was located at a secluded spot at the back of the village. It had been vacant since my grandmother passed away last year. Fortunately, aside from being a bit run down, it was still habitable. I checked the well in the yard, and whether it was because it was well dug or for some other reason, there was still some water at the bottom. I quickly drew some water to clean up the house, then filled all available containers with well water. I planned to hide out here for a while. With the supplies I had, I could last these 6 months until the national heat issue was resolved. Perhaps because I was well prepared, my days in the old house went smoothly. I had a variety of food stored, allowing me to enjoy balanced meals every day. During boring days, I'd hide in my room with snacks and fruits prepared. Watching movies, reading books, and enjoying snacks and fruits made my days quite delightful. A few days after moving to the old house, perhaps grateful for my earlier decision to sell the supplies, some villagers came to visit me, bringing a bit of food. They also expressed sympathy for me, complaining that my parents were too harsh in throwing their daughter out to fend for herself. Pretending to be upset, I hinted that there were actually still some supplies left in the store's warehouse. Everything had been put away by my parents. My aunts, with shifty eyes, subtly inquired if there were any other hiding spots in the store. Pretending to be naive, I informed them one by one. Currently, everyone's home supplies are quite ample, so no one is thinking about committing crimes. But once the food runs out, it's a different story. The evil in human nature is always unpredictable. Soon, the temperature soared to over 50 degrees Celsius. Unless absolutely necessary, no one dared to go outside. At that temperature, just staying outside for a little while could cause heat stroke. Everyone tried their best to stay indoors, praying for this horrific nightmare to end quickly. After 2 months of high temperatures, the old house was cool in summer and warm in winter. I found a room shielded from direct sunlight to use as a bedroom. Outside, the sky was cloudless with the blazing sun suspended high. The ground was cracked like a tortoise shell, steaming and rolling with heat. I hid in my room with a bucket full of large ice blocks taken from the space freezer in front of me. The ice bucket emitted a faint coolness. I leaned in to enjoy the rare relief. I also took out some cold drinks from the space and started eating a watermelon with a spoon. I was so comfortable that I sighed with relief. Suddenly, I heard someone knocking on my door. I quickly stashed everything back into the space and, feigning weakness, went to the door to ask, "Who's out there?" "Sue, open up, it's your parents." I was stunned, not expecting them to come in such hot weather. I opened the door to find my parents, whom I hadn't seen in 2 months. They looked noticeably thinner than when they had just returned to the village. My mom, sizing me up, said cheerfully, "Sue, Mom and Dad came to see if you're doing well." As she spoke, she pushed past me into the house. My parents looked around the dilapidated old house while searching everywhere. The old house had few pieces of furniture. It was mostly filled with broken wood. My mom made a face of disgust. "This house is so old. It doesn't even have furniture." "Sue, where have you been cooking these days?" The dilapidation of the house was intentional. I had dismantled some unnecessary furniture long ago and thrown it into various corners. Apart from my bed, a small table, and a chair, there was not a single intact piece of furniture in the entire house. It was all a mess. This was to prevent any ill-intentioned people from targeting me. Unexpectedly, no one from the village came, but my parents were the first to visit. I pursed my lips, pretending to be pitiful. "Mom, where do I have food to cook? I've been surviving on dried bread and instant noodles that the aunts sent before." My mom's eyes lit up, and she immediately pressed on, "Oh, where did you put them?" I pointed to a broken bamboo basket in the corner of the hall. "It's hidden in there." My mom quickly stepped forward, flipped the basket over, and indeed found a small bag of bread and a half bag of instant noodles. She looked somewhat dissatisfied and glanced at my dad. My dad had already checked several rooms and found nothing. He could only shake his head at my mom. Frowning, my mom said to me, "Sue, you haven't paid this month's support money yet. Mom will just take this food in lieu." "Mom, if you take it all, what will I do? I'll starve. You're grown up now. You can't rely on your parents anymore. Girls need to be independent. You have to rely on yourself." After saying this, my mom, holding the food, and my dad hurriedly left under the scorching sun. I was already prepared for my parents to come asking for food. Unexpectedly, they arrived just about 2 months after I anticipated. This was much earlier than I had guessed. I locked the door, returned to my room, and pulled out my tablet to turn on the surveillance footage from the store. I run a store in the countryside by myself and, for security reasons, have installed several hidden cameras inside the house. My parents didn't know about this and didn't check after moving in. Now, it was the perfect time to see what was happening. After I left, they moved straight into the house, watching the once fully stocked shelves, now emptied as I had sold everything. Each of them was furious. their faces turning a livid shade of blue. My brother, with a dark expression, kept cursing me as he unloaded supplies from the car. Which family practices gender equality like ours? We treated Sue so well, and she went ahead and sold all our supplies. Such an ingrate. Has she lost her mind? It's practically the apocalypse, and she still plays the saint. Crazy. I won't give her a single piece of these supplies. Let her starve to death in the old house. There were quite a few supplies moved out of the van. I figured that, if used sparingly, they could last about 3 or 4 months. However, I hadn't anticipated my brother's spoiled nature from childhood. He had always lived a life where he could have anything he wanted, never experiencing a lack of food. So now, seeing that he still had a considerable stash of supplies, he indulged without restraint. Our parents initially tried to moderate his consumption, but he retorted, "According to the rules of our house, all of this is mine. You should be grateful I'm letting you eat it all. What right do you have to control me?" Upon hearing this, my parents agreed and stopped persuading him. Then, a few nights ago, a group of people stealthily entered. My parents and brother, having eaten their fill, were sound asleep in bed, completely unaware of the intruders who climbed over the wall and entered through the second floor. These shadows quickly found the hidden supplies, pulled out prepared sacks, and efficiently packed them. By the time they escaped over the wall with the sacks, the 3 were still sleeping like logs. The next morning, waking to find the storage empty, they could only sit on the floor in dismay. Fortunately, they had hidden some food elsewhere, but it was clearly insufficient. After scrimping for a few days, my parents finally thought of me. Sue didn't take anything, but as long as she's alive, she must have found food. Yes. If she hadn't sold all the food in the store, we wouldn't be starving. This is all her fault, and besides, we are her parents. It's only right for her to support us. They planned to ask for food under the guise of maintenance. Unfortunately, the little food I took wasn't enough for the 3 of them. As soon as my parents returned home, before they could catch their breath, my brother was already complaining as he grabbed a bag of bread. "How is this enough? It's not even enough for one meal." My mother, her face red from the sun and clothes soaked with sweat, still had to comfort her son. "We still have some at home. If we eat sparingly, it should be enough." "That's not enough. Didn't Sue sell a lot of food to those country folk? She should ask them for some. They can't just watch their benefactor starve, can they?" Upon hearing this, my parents' faces lit up with smiles. "My son is so smart. Let's have Sue ask them." My dad took out his phone and dialed my number. Watching my father's actions on the video, my phone immediately rang. "Sue, don't starve yourself. Go ask the villagers for some food. They owe you a favor. Isn't it reasonable to ask for some food?" I suggested. "Dad, who would give away food at this hour?" I replied, "Well, there's still me. Many people in the village are my childhood friends. They'll give you something out of respect for me, but since you're using my connections, to be fair, you'll have to bring most of it back home." He reasoned. "Okay, Dad, just wait at home." I agreed. Ever since my parents were robbed once, people assumed they didn't have much food left. Thieves stopped targeting their place. I was worried about how to draw attention to them. But then they handed me the opportunity themselves. Following my father's instructions, I would go out early each morning when it was slightly cooler and ask for food. I approached the nearest house and knocked. "Uncle, my dad said he's been good friends with you since childhood, so he sent me to swap some food with you." Uncle Benson cracked the door open, eyeing me warily. "No swap. There's hardly any food left here. You better leave." I quickly pulled out a small bag of bread from my coat, ignoring Uncle Benson's suddenly eager eyes, and continued, "My little brother says he's tired of eating bread and instant noodles and wants to try something different." Uncle Benson stared intently at the bread in my hand, anxiously asking, "What do they want to exchange?" "Just some durable vegetables like potatoes and carrots, or even dried veggies would do. Bread is more filling than vegetables." I looked around sneakily and whispered, "My parents said getting some veggies would make meals more appetizing." Uncle Benson's eyes lit up, and he eagerly grabbed my arm. "Do your parents still have rice?" "I'm not sure about that. I'm just running errands for them. Afterwards, I'll take a couple of breads back to the old house to eat." Since my parents had kicked me out without food, many villagers knew about it, so they naturally believed what I said. Uncle Benson didn't ask any further. He hurried back inside and returned with a small bag of dried radishes, which he exchanged for the small bag of bread. Then, he firmly shut the door. I repeated the process at a few more houses. As the weather started to warm up, I quickly delivered the food to my parents. They happily accepted the food I brought, thinking I had begged for it. My dad even proudly boasted, "See, my contacts are useful," before sending me away. The next day, I again ran errands exchanging small breads. On the third day, I used the excuse of feeling unwell to stay home, but in just 2 days, it was enough for the villagers to know my parents still had food, and not just a little. Otherwise, why would they willingly trade bread for some less filling dried vegetables? I lay in bed at home, feeling at ease, waiting to see what the villagers would do next. In my room, I held my long-missed ice bucket while watching the surveillance on my tablet. As I predicted, late at night, several figures climbed over the wall into the shop. Since the last theft, my parents had stored the remaining food under their bed, so the thieves rummaged outside for a long time without finding a thing, forcing them to risk entering the bedroom. The noise woke my parents up. They shouted, "Catch the thief! There's a thief!" Seeing they were exposed, the thieves decided to escalate to a blatant robbery. My parents tried to intervene but were beaten up. They lay motionless on the ground as the thieves left. In passing, they also beat up my younger brother, who came out to see what the shouting was about. Only then did I climb over the wall and escape. From the security footage, I watched this family's faces swell and turn blue. Finally, I felt a sense of revenge. Just wait, now that you've succeeded, everyone will know you still have food hidden. From now on, there will be an endless stream of people coming to steal and rob in the village. After seeing my parents get robbed once, people noticed they still had plenty of supplies the second time. They were convinced my parents still had more hidden away, so people started coming nonstop. As soon as these people climbed the wall, they searched everywhere. If they couldn't find anything, they dragged up my father and brother and beat them. They forced my mother to hand over the food. My mom had nothing left, and could only watch helplessly as her husband and son were beaten to a pulp. Once everyone realized they truly had no food left, they left grudgingly. After they left, my mom scrambled up and, crying, called me. I picked up the phone slowly, listening to my mom lament. "Sue, your dad and brother have been beaten. Doesn't dad have many connections? Why didn't he ask for help?" My mom was taken aback by my response and continued crying. "Dear, please go find some food, otherwise we are going to starve. You're all adults, why are you still relying on a child? You need to fend for yourselves." "Fine, fine. Are you just going to abandon your parents?" I laughed and reassured her. "Mom, it's not easy to ask for things now. Don't worry, I'll see what I can do." I verbally agreed, but I really couldn't be bothered to move. Every day, my parents were at home starving to the point of hallucinating. They kept calling, and I kept making excuses. People wouldn't give me anything. There was no one at home. When they became desperate, I suggested, "Maybe try looking for food in the hills behind our house. Everyone is heading there. Our old home is near the mountains, but the nearby mountains aren't very high. In the past few months, they have become barren and yellow, but this is the only place in the countryside where food can still be found. Even though the outdoor temperature has reached over 60 degrees Celsius, many people have collapsed in the mountains, never to wake up again. Still, many risk being sunburned to death in search of food. In my previous life, I was killed by Brant on the way to the mountains, so this time, I left the decision to venture into the mountains to them. Sure enough, my parents stopped pressuring me to ask for food in the village. They started pressuring me to go into the mountains. I flatly refused. "I'm not going. That wouldn't be fair or just, which is our family's principle." "How is that unfair? Just like your brother. You two have to support the family. Why don't you send my brother then? His skin is too delicate. How could he withstand the sun?" I shouted. "That's blatant sexism. It's an insult to our family's honor. I won't do it." After saying that, I hung up the phone and turned it off. Then I quietly packed my things and hid next door. The house next door is an old building, uninhabited for over a decade, even more dilapidated than our old house. I had already secretly prepared a small room there, surrounded by piles of discarded furniture, absolutely hidden unless thoroughly searched. I arranged comfortable bedding and took out an ice bucket. Comfortably lying down, I waited to see whom my parents would send out to find food. After 2 days of noisy quarrels, during which they even came to the old place trying to find me, after several unsuccessful attempts and with the sun growing more scorching, they had to give up and return, having fought several times at home and really unable to bear the hunger anymore. My mom finally headed towards the back mountain. She was not willing at all. My father had beaten her several times, and my son constantly complained about her. He even threatened that if he couldn't find food, he would trade her to the local militia for supplies. The militia was formed by some idle people in the scorching aftermath of the apocalypse. Taking advantage of their numbers and the fact that they were all young and strong men, they committed all sorts of atrocities in the nearby villages. Despite their bad reputation, they indeed managed to amass quite a few resources. Later, some inherently evil individuals even joined them willingly. They are now a notorious criminal gang in the area, once their basic needs were met. These men started wanting women. Merely hinting that food could be exchanged for women was enough to make many desperate people agree. Some families, disregarding the women's wishes, forcefully took them to trade for food. In my previous life, my brother threatened me similarly. To avoid falling into the hands of the militia, I risked my life by fleeing to the mountains behind our home, unexpectedly. I was killed by Brant on the way. This time, unable to find me, the burden fell on my mother. Braving the extreme heat of 60 degrees Celsius, my mother made several trips to the mountains behind our home. She actually managed to find some grass roots and cassava. However, she was so sunburned that blisters formed all over her body. Through the surveillance camera, I saw my mother lying on the ground, barely breathing. The blisters on her body burst, oozing pus and blood all over the ground. My father and brother, eating the cassava she found, didn't even look at her. I couldn't help but remember how she didn't glance at me either when I was beaten to death. Truly, like family, my brother then discussed with my father, while she's still breathing, we should quickly trade her for some food, otherwise, once she's dead, we can't trade her for anything. After pondering for a while, my father agreed. They carried my mother out the door just like that. Soon, they sneaked back with a few bags of bread and biscuits, and some bottles of water. Is this all we got? How many days will this last? My brother cursed as he hid the supplies. He didn't see the shifty look in my father's eyes behind him. I had a feeling that my father was up to no good, so I kept an eye on the surveillance, watching what he would do. In a few days, the food they had traded for was gone. The two men lay in bed, neither mentioning going out to find food. A few days later, my father sneaked out while my brother was asleep. When he returned, he was followed by two strange men. As soon as they entered, they tied up my brother without a word. My brother struggled desperately, but how could someone weakened by hunger resist? One of the strangers casually touched my brother's face. Stop struggling, your dad has sold you to us. Heh, city folks sure are fairer than us here. My brother looked at my father in disbelief, his mouth gagged and making muffled noises. My father cowered in the corner, not daring to look at him. Just like my mother, my brother was carried away. They left behind several loaves of bread, a bag of rice, and a big bucket of water. It seems he was worth more. My father shakily stuffed bread into his mouth, muttering, "Gender equality, men can also be married off." I let out a cold laugh. Too disgusted to watch any longer, I turned off the surveillance on my tablet and decided to ignore them forever. Outside, the chaos worsened, with people willing to kill for a bite of food or a sip of water. I hid in the broken house of a neighboring villager without moving. Everybody in the village knew I was in the old house, and going back was simply not safe. As long as I had enough food in my space, all I needed to do was stay hidden well. One night, I heard several people rummaging through my old house. Faint voices could be heard. Looks like there's no one left. Maybe they died in the mountains. I hid in a corner, holding my breath, not daring to make a sound. Fortunately, the neighboring house had been abandoned for over a decade, and they subconsciously overlooked it and didn't come to search. After searching for a while and finding nothing, they finally left. I breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed all was safe now. From then on, I became even more cautious, careful not to leave any trace that I was still living here. Enduring day by day, there finally came a day when the sky began to gather some dark clouds, just a few shallow layers that soon dispersed. But I knew that the end of the heat wave was near. The clouds grew thicker each day, and finally one evening, it poured. The rain lasted for 7 days, and the temperature quickly dropped to around 40 degrees Celsius. It was still hot, but at least it wasn't deadly anymore. The village began to come alive again. Those who survived walked out of their homes, kneeling in the rain, weeping bitterly. The apocalyptic heat wave had ended. The government reacted quickly, and soon, the self-defense groups were arrested by armed police. Those who dared to resist were shot on the spot. The public security also quickly organized village officials to thoroughly investigate those who had committed crimes before. Many were detained, and the village's public order returned to pre-apocalyptic conditions. Only then did I dare to return to my old house and interact with others. One day, the village secretary approached me to identify the bodies of my relatives. My mother had died just days after being sold, discarded by the self-defense group in a mountain ditch. My brother had been alive but went insane, disappearing during the chaos of the self-defense group's arrest. My father, however, was a surprise. I thought he might have starved in the house or sought refuge with the self-defense group. Instead, he was killed by Brant over some food. He had sold people twice, and Brant had seen both times. After selling my brother, Brant sneaked into the house under the cover of darkness. He intended to steal some food, but my father discovered him. In the struggle, Brant pulled out a kitchen knife and struck him. Brant killed him, took the food, and left. He was later caught and sentenced to death. I silently collected my parents' ashes and buried them in a pit in the back mountain. In the end, good and evil received their due. A year after the heatwave ended, I left my hometown and settled in another city. After the heatwave, the village secretary reported my deeds of generously helping my fellow villagers. Eventually, the province awarded me a humanitarian award and a cash prize. With that money, the proceeds from the store sales, and my previous savings, I bought a small apartment in a city with a mild climate. I got a job in a company that matched my college major in accounting. Every day after work, I would come home, pet my cat, and cook myself a delicious meal. Life went on peacefully and beautifully. Only the scars on my body reminded me of everything that had happened in these two lives.